is a toxic ideology. It's a cult. And what I mean by it's a cult, it denies reality. It hates everybody who criticizes it, attacks everybody who criticizes it, just like any cult. If you believe it, you're a traitor, you're a self-hating Jew, you're a terrorist supporter, you're a Nazi, and they repress anybody who criticizes them. They can't tolerate, because to identify with it is the identification. Identification means the Latin word idem, which means the same, and facere, which means to make. Once in your unconscious, you make yourself the same as. Then as soon as if I'm a historical victim, and if Israel is my redemption, then as soon as you criticize Israel, you're attacking me because I identify with it. I have no capacity to think objectively about what actually happened. I don't even care. If somebody tells them what happened, I won't believe them. It's so blind, it's so narrow that there's no debate, there's no discussion. They know how weak their position is. What pumps them up is the support of the evil empire. You know, first the British and then the American. And what pumps them up also, if I may say, is the collaboration and cowardice and opportunism of the Arab regimes.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Have a lot to talk about. Probably going to be a longer show today. I'm going to tell you out of the gate that depending on a couple different circumstances, I might have to end early. So I put the title a little bit more ambiguous than usual because that latter part really encapsulates quite a bit. We're going to start today with the following up right out of the gate with what's going on with Israel, the Gaza, the lie around the ceasefire, and some really important reporting from quite a few different people. Drop Site News is where I saw it first, and their investigation and Ryan Grimm and breaking down the lie around why they claim there was a violation. And this is ignoring, by the way, the 6-7 days of bombing, kidnapping, all sorts of violations, restriction of aid, all actual, very clear, verifiable violations of a ceasefire, of the ongoing lie of the ceasefire. And then there was a couple of IDF members that were killed, and the report was that Hamas staged the attack and they used to spin this out. They denied the aid. Well, it was kind of an overlapping point. And it turns out that that was something quite different, as we've come to expect from Zionist propaganda. It turns out in this case, it was munitions that were left by Israel that they ended up hitting, and whether they died that moment or not, the point is that they caused something that they then used to blame Hamas. And ongoing still bombing, ongoing actions in Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, all over the place, as well as a few others that I think are very important to understand. Now, it's kind of, I don't know how the right word for it. So we've been covering this a lot, and this happens, I mean, literally every single time. And I'm not even just talking about the ceasefire. That's been 7-8 times. But the government, Israeli propaganda, and how long that's been happening, it's so shockingly consistent. It happens every time. And so it's not even that, for those that are following along, it's okay, yeah, we already knew that was going to happen because that's what happened every time, even though we shouldn't assume. So it's interesting that there's a word that needs to be created for how we're going along with this, and this kind of weird dynamic of the mainstream elements, both alternative and whatever, if you still want to call it that, and the mainstream media and the kind of empires and the governments and the institutions, and how they're all just kind of dragging this thing along, knowing that we see them, knowing that they know that we know they're doing that. It's fascinating. It's alarming. And I think it also shows a really, really obvious vulnerability, that's how close we are to actually tipping this thing over the edge. So we're going to go over a lot of the different points around that I think are very relevant. And I think more than just the lies, the fake deal, the way Trump is framing it, the discussions with Netanyahu, and the ongoing reality of the undeniable infiltration of Zionism and Israel's government within the U.S. power structure. Just really no way to deny that at this point. And it is, willful ignorance, to say it very nicely, for people that choose to ignore the obviousness. And this is not an opinion. These are verifiable realities, now even coming from even corporate media in some ways. But we'll also talk about quite a bit. And this is where so many topics, from the overlap of like the No Kings protest, the lies about violence, the building narrative of the left and violent terrorism, and the Antifa overlap to that, how ICE is using both of those things and really going after whoever they want. The ProPublica report, which is very important to understand, it's way more than 170. We've been watching the entire time, but proving 170 people that were detained without warrant. They were, many of them U.S. citizens. I mean, it's just, this needs to be a come to Jesus moment for people out there that believe this administration is doing anything in their favor. No different than the last administration, left and right, and as far back as you want to look if you're really paying attention, in my opinion. But there's a lot of different points around this that are very relevant, and how it's affecting your rights in this country, and how it begins to affect and has long affected people's rights and livelihoods all around the world. But it has definitely come home, and it's been that way for quite a while. The overlap of George Soros and what that means when they frame it as political influence without really proving any violence, and realizing that that's creating a precedent to go after anybody using money to try to push back against political, persecution or whatever else. And that's not to say that's what Soros is doing. It's just clear that those things are not on the table, in my opinion. Soros or Obama or any of them, you think they're going to be held accountable? I certainly hope so, but I'm not holding my breath. And so we'll go over how this is all playing out and how it mixes together. And I mean, in a very obvious way, like I said, with Antifa and ICE and Israel, and there's something much more here. And as I've said many times, it obviously comes together when, the agenda of Israel and the U.S. probably differ in some ways, but it always comes together when it's about the control of your life, the influence over what you can say and think and buy and everything else. And I think it's very clear that right now we're in probably one of the most precarious moments in this country in that regard that I've ever seen. Now, it's possible that it feels that way and it felt that way in past events, but I think there's something unique about this, at least from what I've investigated and what I can see. And so a few other points we'll get into, but I'll leave it there to start. So let's start with Israel. And actually, technically one point, which very much does relate to that topic. And it's an article that Carrie Weather put out that I think is very much worth your time. And it's very well done. It's called "The Charlie Kirk Hysteria is a Blueprint for the Future, Political Chaos." And this is not even getting into the lies and manipulations around the entire story, the lack of it's about how it's being used, whatever actually happened. And it's fascinating to see how obvious it is. And, makes you wonder whether it's actually is that the majority or not? You can decide, read the article, but what's very clear is the power structure is very much using these kind of things. This one in particular, and how it is building something for what seems to come next. Very well done article. Carrie hopefully writing more as we go forward for TLAV. Now, that was just to make sure you saw that when we started. Now, we're going to get into Israel right out of the gate here. Now, I'm going to include some of the shows, the recent shows that we did around this, to just set some points in your mind. Israel was always going to violate the ceasefire. We weren't psychic. We just knew that because it was obvious around how it's always been going, what they were saying in the Knesset. This wasn't even assumption. It was basically outlined, just like it was last time. And we weren't psychic then either. And as ISIS-linked gangs continue their Gaza killing. Now, to be clear, the show was done after they'd violated it. My point was we were saying the same before it ever happened. Based on, in many cases, and this is my opinion, and as well, what they said in their government and what they were planning to do and what they've done in the past and all of that. But importantly, ISIS-linked gangs continue their Gaza killing. ISIS-linked gangs that have been proven, and just for one point on that, I don't have to rehash the whole story every time, is to just show you the Haaretz article from the leading Israeli newspaper that very clearly points out. Now, whether you can get into the nuance of it all, what this has to be taken as absolute fact is that they discussed this, and you can prove that they did. So in their political situation, their Congress, in Knesset, they're discussing about the provable reality that these Gaza militias, the gangs, the whatever they're calling them, that gang is important for something that Trump says, are linked to the ISIS groups they claim they're always fighting. And if you understand beyond that, you know that ISIS and United States and Israel have been funding and working, manipulating through ISIS and Al-Qaeda since their initiation. It's we have to move beyond these blatant misrepresentations and the facts that people like James Corbett have nailed to the wall. And both sides, of course, in case you missed that point. But the idea that they discussed this and Netanyahu said, what's wrong with that? We're using it to fight bad guys or whatever he claims. So just recognize how clearly they are working with ISIS elements in these, everywhere, to be clear again, but in this conversation. We also followed up on the 18th, how the U.S. government is gaslighting Americans. We're going to talk about some of that today. And that's really just about the larger picture. This was about the current power with the right and however you want to see it. But the reality is it's left and right as far back as you look, and they're gaslighting us. And right now, more than ever, the culture war, division tactics. It's always been there. It's at an alarming fever pitch right now, and it's being led by some of the most, the people that really do not care about most of the things they claim they're aiming for, which seems like you could put that together better, but it's very obvious. And that's why in many ways it's falling apart. But Israel has violated the ceasefire every day since it began, provably. And I've shown you the videos. I've shown you them praising it. It's, and I'm not talking about Netanyahu in front of the corporate media. I'm talking about what Ben Gvir says, what people in the government say. It's not debatable. So starting with drop site report, or actually these are two things to, again, this is the one we're going to start with right here. But this is from the 20th, this post the 19th. 135 mutilated Palestinian bodies were returned to Gaza and were traced to Israel's, guess what, said Yemen base. And this, if you don't remember, this is the report called Welcome to Hell that the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem outlined. Welcome to Hell, the Israel prison system as a network of torture camps. And they make a real clear focus on the rape that took place, which we can all prove in said Yemen. If I'm saying that correctly, I believe that's how it's pronounced now. And if I looked it up last time, but it's been a while. So the point is that this is something that all these mutilated, tortured bodies, they all tie back to that. And there's way more than 135. We have examples of last time people reporting organs missing. Last time in the last report, it's like a couple days ago. And here's the Guardian article. At least 135 mutilated bodies of Palestinians have been held in a notorious Israeli jail. And it's not, says Gaza official. It's so disgusted by even they have to. This is what this is corporate media recognizing there's no denying this anymore and still pulling the punch where they can. This is something that even Israel, the reality of what they've done to them, they've openly debated and discussed on corporate media in Israel and praised it. There's just no getting around this. Of course, they'll lie when they point to it on corporate media and Fox News and One America News, and they give you the one-sided view. And really, even the left media, that when they pull punches for Israel, the point is this is not October 7th forward. Okay, this is Israel in its entirety and what they've always been doing. So the point is that they return these bodies, knowing that they would be seen. Doctors in Khan Yunis said autopsies clearly indicate the Israel carried out acts of murder, summary executions, and systematic torture. Now, in the case of how they're looking at this and what they're reviewing, or what they're reporting, yeah, you can question whether they may lie about that. I think it's pretty obvious this is the consistent reality. My point is that these things have happened and have happened in this event are undeniable. Victims blindfolded. Remember when they dug up Al-Shifa and they found that the mass grave of women and children and elderly all blindfolded and bound behind their back? Yeah, and nobody cared in the corporate media. Same thing happens every single time. So keeping that in mind, on the 19th, yet again, after the last show we did, yep, they were bombing during the so-called ceasefire. It's a horrifying video if you want to watch it of people burning alive like we've seen more times than I thought I would ever see in my entire life in the last year of this genocide. If ever one, right? The idea that I've seen multiple videos of children burning alive says something about the insane reality of where we are and what Israel's being allowed to get away with from people like Trump and Biden and Putin and Xi and everybody else who's doing nothing about the reality of this. Now, drop site news, great report. First, Ryan Grimm on the 19th reports soon after the explosion in Rafah. Now, what this was is an explosion that they claimed was, set up by Hamas. He says he's told by a source familiar with the White House and the Pentagon knew that the incident was caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over unexploded ordnance, contradicting Netanyahu's claim that Hamas had popped up from tunnels. Now, also note, by the way, not to necessarily put a name to it, it's not important right now, but there are plenty of people out there, some of them with very large followings, that tend to take things like this, like the well-sourced research investigation, and then just kind of tweet it out and say, my sources say insider people in the White House claim that this happened. And all they're doing is pointing to this report, who you could question his source too, and whether he's making it up. I don't believe that's the case, but just note that there's a lot of kind of bottom feeder grifters out there that will just kind of grab things and put them out. Jones does it every day. But it says House and the Pentagon knew that the incident was caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over their ordnance, contradicting Netanyahu's claim that Hamas had popped up. After Netanyahu said he was blocking all aid from entering Gaza in response and unleashed a bombing campaign, I'll make points in a second, the administration conveyed to Israel that they know what happened. Netanyahu then announced he would reopen the crossings in a few hours. Netanyahu reactivated his genocidal war on Gaza. Mustafa Barghouti reports on the 19th. His army conducted more than 100 airstrikes. 100 since the morning of this on the 19th, killed more than 30 Palestinian civilians. Netanyahu also activated his collective punishment of the civilian population, blocking all humanitarian aid to Gaza. Nothing new. Now, Drop Site News reports that Ryan Grimmer, his reporting of the U.S. officials knew within hours that Rafah explosion, which Netanyahu used to justify halting all aid and resuming airstrikes, was actually caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over an unexploded ordnance. Now, you could argue not necessarily whose ordnance, but it's pretty obvious to recognize where these things are coming from. And the kind of thing that would do this would be something that would be dropped by Israel, and the amount that they've dropped has left untold amount unexploded. Everyone knows the story. So you could argue something else, but the reality is that what they were doing and where they were going and how it was done, I think this is a pretty objectively obvious story. It says, despite that, Netanyahu blamed Hamas, suspended aid, and ordered new bombings. After Washington told that they knew, he quietly announced he'd reopen the crossings in a few hours. Now, that has not appeared to have happened, at least in the way they framed it would, and aid still seems to be restricted. Here is Dave DeCamp, who will be interviewing soon from antiwar.com, and Ryan Grimm, unfortunately speaking with One American News, but hey, at least he's having the conversation with them and putting it out there. I will note that somebody like Matt Gaetz seems to stand out as somewhat very obvious of an example of somebody who, just look at what he was saying before when he wasn't doing this job, that really it's an opportunist moment for him, which that's what I think, but he's still putting them on and allowing people that I think have the right of it to put that out there and giving it reach. So good. That's the way we have to look at this. Now, I'm going to make a point about that AIPAC guy in a minute about when I said, yes, raise up the guy who's refusing AIPAC money. Well, there's more to the story. I'll still point to the fact that he did that, but it's an important point to realize that there's a lot of opportunism out there. Israel is collapsing. The reality of its agenda is wide open, and people are slowly starting to recognize they can't keep towing the line. People that have their entire careers. And so you're going to start to see this happen. But either way, my point is to continue to say that people say it, point to it, but just question them, recognize they could be doing it for their own benefit, like anybody else, like myself included. Question everybody, guys. That all being said, I just make it clear that I don't think Matt Gaetz is an honest actor in all of this. It's a good discussion to point out what they're reporting about what they saw, which I think is not new in regard to what Israel does every single time. And I honestly, to add to it, like last time, I think that Donald Trump and Netanyahu had a discussion about when and how they would play this out. That's my opinion, but it's happened. The last time was not. The last time was a verifiable point that in the second phase that they would deliberately stop it and blame Hamas. This time, I just think it's probably most likely the same.
And what are you learning regarding the impetus for this violence in Rafah? We've got a map here of the site in question, so walk us through your observations.
Yeah, so on Sunday, the IDF reported that there had been an RPG attack right here if you look at the screen there at what used to be the Rafah airport. It's still called the Rafah airport. It hasn't operated in some time now. They also said that some snipers had come out, that the IDF was trying to clear a tunnel, and that some fighters may have been hiding out in this tunnel. But what's important for people to understand when they look at this map here is look how far behind enemy lines this Rafah airport is. So you have IDF positions right nearby. You have absolute moonscape rubble as far as the eye can see. And you don't have a tunnel network that connects to the rest of Gaza from there. So there are...
And in case you missed the point about being behind enemy lines, is just to argue that there's no way, so they've just been, they're at the tunnel point, you could argue maybe all the way from a far away, but that doesn't seem to be the reality based on what they've been doing. Overall is that this is on their side of it. And they just end up, I think what happened was they got embarrassed by the fact that they did it to themselves and said, let's just blame Hamas. I think that's what happens every time. Again, that's my opinion.
Two possibilities here if the IDF story is accurate. Either some Hamas fighters managed to somehow sneak through this rubble for many kilometers, get behind the enemy lines, and then launch an ambush, or that just days after agreeing to a ceasefire, or they've been hiding out in this tunnel for 8 months at this point, because the IDF has controlled this area for roughly 8 months at this point. How they would be provisioned, food and water, So those are the two credible possibilities. Now, what I was told by a source familiar with this situation is that shortly after this happened, the Americans had intelligence that what happened was that bulldozer that was operated by a kind of settler company that is destroying homes in Rafah, the homes that remain standing, had run over either unexploded ordnance or some type of improvised explosive device that had not detonated during the fighting that had taken place in Rafah many months ago, and that the United States then relayed to Israel that they had this intel, that this is what had happened, that we know there's enormous amount, there are IEDs and there's enormous amount of unexploded ordnance from shells in particular, but also from bombs dropped from the sky that hasn't blown up, and when a bulldozer runs over that, it might blow up, and that's what happened. And
well, hold on, I want to draw a fine point on that, Ryan, because if that's true, it would seem to suggest that White House officials believe Israel has lied to them. Is that what you're reporting?
Yes, that's what they believe.
Nothing new there.
And when they conveyed to them that they knew what had happened, if you notice, shortly after that, Netanyahu said that he was opening the crossings back up. Is what he said. He said, all right, because of this attack, we are closing, just like they did on March 2nd, we're closing all of the crossings, and no food, no medicine, nothing is getting in. After this message from the White House was relayed to Israel, Netanyahu announced, actually, we're going to reopen them on Monday morning, which is just because of the time difference, just a few hours later. So the closure.
And that's not really what's happened. Like just glancing right now again, check before I started. As far as I can tell, they've slightly reopened some and have pretended to allow more aid. It's not zero at the moment, but remember how this goes. If you, from the very beginning, 500 trucks a day, including fuel, they were already food insecure. That's well below the mark that the UN and everybody else was saying, even back then. That's when Gavir was saying caloric intake and withholding them. They were doing that before October 7th. Okay, so, and beyond that, they just pushed it even harder. So my point is that all they did was sort of pause it to nothing and then bring back a small amount and act like, okay, we're complying. They're not. They're still completely in violation, even as of right now, as best I can tell.
Sure. Of all of these crossings, this major dramatic move that Netanyahu made was then fully reversed within a matter of hours.
But wait, you attribute that to the fact that the U.S. officials basically called Netanyahu out, that Netanyahu had this story about the violence. U.S. officials say, we actually know that you're not telling us the truth, and then that explains the reversal.
Yes. But that's not verified, right? Like the idea, who can speak to what their intention was and what they thought? But I agree. I think, or rather, I don't know if I agree. You could argue that them pointing it out, my gut would tell me that the fact that that's being pointed to is probably because somebody out there wants that to be seen. The idea that somehow they're pushing back against the Israel government, I don't know, maybe. I think it's always multifaceted. I'm of the mind that there are people in the government even that are very uncomfortable about the Zionist infiltration over this government, want the power Israel gives them, but I think there's a mixed bag with everything we're talking about. So whether or not that was how it worked out or not, the point to take away from it is that they've used all of that to claim that Hamas violated the ceasefire. And even if you think that's what happened, you're the 6-7 days before that of nonstop bombing, or rather not nonstop bombing, but where they bombed every day during a ceasefire, people being kidnapped, the food and the lines we'll get to, all of this were violations and still are, even as it stands right now. So this is just such a dishonest game. And I know you all know this already, but it's important for posterity to get these things out there, to make sure we have them on the record so you could look at it even as we're being wildly suppressed every time we go live, because that's just the way the world works today. But as Caitlin Johnstone says, no matter how much you hate the imperial media, you don't hate them enough. And here is what the Washington Post had to say. On the 19th, I showed you the video of civilians burning alive in their homes. It says Gaza ceasefire is cracking. Hamas is to blame. That's how, this is what the Wall Street, the Washington Post, and pretty much every other group, even the ones pretending to lean in the direction of maybe being honest about Israel. Israel has killed nearly 100 Palestinians since the ceasefire began. That's a reality, guys. I've been covering it the entire time. Now, here's the frustrating part. This is the false world that the mainstream and the mainstream alternative media operate in, is that you have this reality, right? We know they've been violating. I can literally prove that to you and have every show so far. Then you've got the media that comes out and goes, Hamas is doing it. You've got the U.S. government that comes out and goes, Hamas is doing it. You got the mainstream alternative media that comes out and says, Hamas is doing it. They're all lying to you. And then you get this extension of the Zionist, I guess, MAGA overlap that comes out and goes, the recap the past week. Hamas films themselves executing over 100 Palestinians. It's not true. The reality is you have examples of the ISIS-linked gangs that we'll point to in a second again that were executing people that we can prove, we've already covered it, that they claim were Hamas. And you have examples of Hamas killing some of these ISIS-linked gangs and them calling that Palestinian civilians. Now, is there a place in which there were Hamas members killing civilians? Certainly possible. Not as best that I can tell. You can check for yourself. The point was, well, they were pointing to, we already know where these gangs they were working with. And even on top of that, the idea that Hamas would do that makes no sense for the agenda they've been laying out. And even continually with even another example today, showing you how well they were treating even the other people, the IDF members that were holding the hostages, the detainees, apparently having beach days. It's not a joke. It's coming directly from one of the people, one of the hostages on Israeli media. I'll show it to you in a minute. So my point is, none of it really adds up, and the facts disprove that. And then he says the media is silent. Are you kidding me? You mean aside from literally the independent media, like I was, like even I talked about it. So mainstream alternative media screamed about it. Hamas. Mainstream media screamed about it. Hamas. They did that. Look at them killing people. I talked about it and said they're lying about it. And his answer is the media is silent. He's just creating a false impression for you to think that you're on the rebel team fighting the deep state. And we're trying to point that it's why, and that the lie is you fighting against the reality. It's insane. Hamas launches RPGs at Israel troops, he says, murdering 2. Oh, you mean the bomb that blew up and killed people? And we're still blaming? Yeah, got that. And he goes, the media is silent. No, they're not. They all screamed about it. Then he says, Israel responds by striking Hamas commander. The media says, Israel violated the ceasefire. What is he even talking about? Now, anyone saying that Israel violated it right now is, I mean, I don't even see a single example of anybody outside of like tangential media who is saying that. So mainstream alternative media to a man is saying Hamas. Mainstream media, I just showed you the Washington Post. And so he simply goes, they're all saying the opposite. So he is creating a false impression for the mindless following team to go, we're the ones fighting the suppression of the left or whatever, and they're the ones literally doing it. It's just completely broken. So Alonso Grimendi, as this guy's saying, Hamas, Al Jazeera, same report, Israel's killed 97 Palestinians and wounded another 230, committed 80 ceasefire violations since October 10th, according to Gaza Media Office. And Grimendi says, have they tried releasing the hostage? Oh, that's right. Yeah, remember that old game where they go, well, release the hostages and it'll all stop. And they did that. And now Israel's holding all the rest of the people they have like we expected. They're rounding people back up like we expected. They're continuing the killing like we expected. Everyone knew this, by the way, literally everybody. The people that are trying to convince you otherwise are either dishonest, absolute morons, or a combination of the two. The reality here is that they were screaming this, as Blakely points out. She says, hey, AIPAC, remember when you claimed to release the hostages and the war ends today? Over and over and over and over for 2 years straight. And all of us called you out that was a lie because Ben Gvir and Smotrich and Netanyahu were all telling you that wasn't going to happen. Well, yes, we remember. And here's Ben Gvir. Now that we have received the hostages, we must return to war and open the gates of hell upon Gaza. Right, you mean just the Hamas people, right? No, Palestinians are Hamas. Yep. You'd think this was difficult to see. No, it was one of the most obvious things I've ever covered in my life. But here we are. And you still have all the people we always point to, all the screaming idiots at the top of the paradigm out there yelling the thing and acting like they're the ones fighting the deep state. Chris Brunette points to this absolute maniac named Randy Fine, who says they don't hold living hostages anymore. Glass. And we'll get to these two they're talking about, and this is the same example. Well, and this is true, by the way. Glassing a city is meant to turn it to glass by dropping a nuke on it. This is a sitting congressman calling for nuclear weapons. Now, maybe you think that that's not what he meant. The point is, regardless, that is what he meant. The point is, overall, he's done this more than once and just simply said nukes. This man is literally calling to execute every person in Gaza, including all the civilians, which is mostly think about how we're talking 1 million people, if not 2 million, as the claims they say they didn't kill as many people as they're the ones telling you 1.5 has to move. They know they killed 1 million people. The point is that 1 million at least. Randy Fine wants you to nuke everybody. Ben Gvir wants you to bring hell upon earth. Trump's telling, I mean, how do we not call this out?
The matter is the Palestinian cause is an evil one.
Yeah, and Congressman, there is a ceasefire deal on the table right now that the White House is hoping both Israel and Hamas will sign on to. Does this shooting change anything when it comes to the course of the war or the negotiations to end it?
Now, remember, this is before. This is not the one from recently. This is, whatever the date was.
Well, I think it speaks to the importance of the only end of the conflict is complete and total surrender by those who support Muslim terror. In World War II, we did not negotiate a surrender with the Nazis. We did not.
Yeah, well, the Nazis were in occupied territory that had legal right to arm resistance, all the nuanced facts. And I'll be clear about this. Granny Fine 100% knows about this. I don't think he's a smart guy, but I know he knows about this. This is a fat Laura Loomer as a guy. Okay, the reality is very clearly these people know what they're doing, and they absolutely do this in order to rationalize in other people's minds the continuation of one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. They laugh about it. They say bombs away when dead children's pictures are posted. That's not even a joke. It's not hyperbolic. How in the world are we sitting here watching people like this, and anyone's even remotely debating about who is good and bad in this conversation? Maybe they're all bad. But you pretend this person's in anything but a bad side, you are lying to yourself or you're just as bad. There's no way around it. That's my opinion. Maybe I'm lost somehow. But if I'm lost, then I don't want to be found in this conversation if that's what it looks like.
Not negotiate a surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender.
No, and he's an idiot or he's lying because that's not even remotely what happened. And anybody will tell you that with any brains in the conversation, that they were 100% in retreat when they chose to do it. We just talked about this. There's plenty. Now, you talk to the mainstream things, you talk to people that pretend, they'll lie to you about it because that's an important thing for our narrative of freedom and liberty and fighting for democracy. But the truth, which is, again, not hard to prove, is that they did that for other reasons and chose to kill all those people to do it. He knows that. That's probably why he's saying it now.
That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture.
So recognize he just said, to be clear, that's what he's calling for, to nuke Gaza.
A surrender with the Nazis. We did not negotiate a surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture, and it needs to be defeated.
We heard in...
And what he's talking about is Muslims, guys. That's it. Muslims. That's the same thing Megyn Kelly's now saying. We just don't want Muslims in the country anymore. That was literally what she was just saying. And I think I have it toward the end. I'm a loss for who these people think. Who are they talking to? Like, I swear, if we're at a point where this is, if this is what majority of this country thinks, then I don't know what I'm doing this for. I don't believe it. And I think you can prove it. I always say that to make a point. It's astounding. The kind of people that are leading, rather ruling. Assault Rod, again, this was the point she already pointed to, as Ben Gvir says, now that we have received the hostages, we must return to the war and open the gates of hell. So just, let's not miss the obvious. How many times they said, return hostages, the war will end. But then I could show you how they were going, no, it won't, because we don't care about it. It doesn't matter. The Fox News, CNNs of the world, and the mainstream alternative media on left and right, we're all too happy to parrot the lie, and they're still doing that. Just it's time to wake up and see it. As Assault Rod says, seems important, so obviously there's no media coverage, of course. Now, this is one of the examples we were just pointing to. These are both IDF members. That's not debatable, just like every other one that was there, save for like one. And I'm talking about the Bibas children, which were killed by Israel bombs, which is an undeniable reality that even the father said publicly. Israel War Room, breaking, 2 IDF soldiers were murdered. Now, we're talking about the same 2, by the way. So this is the same conversation. They're trying to misrepresent the entire story, but murdered. The terrorists emerged from a terror tunnel and attacked them. Oh, you mean not rolling over ordnance and blowing yourselves up and then blaming it on somebody else. But the point is, murdered? Aren't you at war? In what world do you say murdered when a soldier gets killed in a war? When you're always the perpetual victim, no matter how that looks. And that's what Martyr Maid says. America's recent wars have been misguided disasters, but at least we don't have the gall to claim our occupying forces are murdered when they were killed. Yeah, they do, though, to be honest. It's a good point, but I've seen Trump and Biden and Obama. I've seen them all do it every time. Or when you point to Soleimani and say he's a terrorist because he's killed all these Americans. Oh, you mean when they were invading Iraq and he was pushing back? It's just it's a delusion. It's a mass delusion, but it seems like a willful delusion to pretend that you're something you're not, that you want to believe that your person, your team is fighting for the right reasons, and it's only the other side that allowed that to happen. Well, here is Sky News, and just somebody reporting with them. One of their hosts says, can you still call a ceasefire when 2 IDF soldiers have been killed on the 19th? Aside from the fact that they already killed, 70 Palestinians, mostly civilians. And on top of that they had already kidnapped people. They shut down food aid. And this is even before the 19th point. They'd already slowed down. They'd already cut off the crossings. Here we are. And as he writes, 45 Palestinians were killed today when she posted this on the 19th. And Abed says, beyond appalling. This is the state of mainstream media today. Now, do you think she even knows? I don't. I think she's just repeating what she's told. She's an Assad toady. She's a Barry Weiss, and eventually she'll be in charge of a massive platform, probably because she lied just the way she was told. That's the world we live in, and we know it. But that's not everything. And if we can stop giving mainstream alternative and mainstream media the power and pretending like they matter, we are already changing it, guys. They are already responding to what we are doing, regardless of whether that is ever actually acknowledged. Nathan Robinson, I was just making this point, wasn't I? That's why I included it. It turns out it was 58%. What did I say? 60 to something? Now, I gave myself a 20%, 60 to 75. Nonetheless, I'm just I was close eyeballing it. But either way, the reality of what this is so important. Look at this line. Do you realize the deal? They were supposed to be allowed to go back to their homes. And how many reports we got of people being killed trying to go back to their homes? What did Israel say? They were approaching whatever they call it, demarcation line. Well, that's a line that they drew, which represents 58% of the area they were told to go back to. They were never giving this up, guys. This is what they did, is encroach them into this part, not the yellow part. They pushed them toward the sea. And now they're saying, fine, go back to your homes. And they tried, they killed them openly. And then Trump goes, Hamas is doing bad things. They're bidding rambunctious out there, acting like they're acting like they're a bunch of kids in a playroom. This is genocide. This is a careful, organized, slow drip genocide. Just absolutely every single moment increasing, encroaching, and acting like you're the hero, acting like you've saved peace in the Middle East, Trump keeps saying. You have to realize how grotesque that is. Him in particular, how much he knows what he's doing. And I don't mean because I know his intentions and thoughts. I mean because you can see that this is on the table. It's surfaced to everybody. Now, I guess you could argue that somehow he's out of the loop and everyone around him has been lying to him. But even then, you'd catch a glimpse of this on Twitter. So he knows what he's doing, and he's absolutely maintaining the lie that is anything but, and he's going to gain from it if we don't stop. And so will the next Democrat administration, guys. And Drop Site says the Israeli army says it has begun placing tall yellow painted concrete blocks every 200 meters to physically mark the yellow line. So it's permanent, and it's only going to get worse. I just want to reiterate the fact that when this supposed ceasefire took place, they were allowed to go back to their home. That was the whole point. It was a concrete, what they say, I forget the word they use. It's a central point. It was a central point to what this was in the deal. And it was one of the first things they denied. And of course, just killing people during the so-called ceasefire. And it says the boundary to which its troops withdraw under the ceasefire, each marker will stand out about 10 feet tall on its top of a yellow metal sign. The line stretches across more than 53% of Gaza, splitting many densely populated urban areas. That's on purpose, by the way, right down the middle. The IDF says installation began Sunday and will continue in the coming period. Nathan says, so under the ceasefire, Israel's holding on to most of Gaza and will kill anyone who passes the line. Just like we were reporting to you, by the way. But because of other people's great reporting, but just recognize how often we are giving you information. If you're able to sit through and watch my long form conversation, which benefits you, you'll be ahead of the conversation. And I mean, almost every time. There's others doing it. It's not because we're psychic. Look at the IMA. We're full of people in our loose organization of people with no financial motivation to it. There's no money element to what we're doing. We're just a grouping of individual journalists that want to, care about objectivity and nonpartisan coverage. My point is that if you look at the track record of what we've been doing and how often we point to these things, you are months ahead of these conversations. Here, Adam points out something that I think is especially evil that I really think Americans need to hear, especially conservatives that somehow don't see this yet. An American journalist, at least it seems in his opinion, was set up by the IDF and rabid settlers that Ben-Gvir seems to be in control of. Now, not whether Ben-Gvir is involved with this or not is up for you to decide. My point is that that's this weird division where Netanyahu's seemingly in power, but he's completely beholden to the Smotrich Ben-Gvir, maniacal element of the most radical Zionist element. And that's these settlers that are raping and burning houses down and torturing people. And I mean, quite literally the extent of all of that. And let's see if I can grab that. Oh, I'm going to forget now. What was it? Nah, I can't remember. The point was about the settlers. Oh, well. Oh, we'll see what that is. Shoot. Now I just lost that. Oh, well. The point was about the... How interesting. The point was about the different people in these areas, that the settlers, that are out there burning things down and torture. And the point was about the report that Robert put out about the child that they burned down inside of a home. And then this might get it right here, actually. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Just from something Adam shared. Oh, guess not. Now I'm going to let it go. There it is right there. Look, this is even Times Israel. So I'm glad I found it, because I hate when I mention something and then I can't put it forward. So there's an article that Robert covered that went over this, but Jewish extremists taunt ollies on the grill at slain toddlers' relatives. This is from 2018, way before October 7th. And they literally burned a family's home down with a child, a toddler, this kid right here. I thought, yeah, right there. Then they literally danced around outside of the area where they were walking up to try to seek justice. They never got, and literally laughing. They had an effigy right here, and Ben Gavir's dancing with them, and they're going, all these on the grill. They're literally laughing and joking about burning a child alive. If you don't see what that shows you about who these people are, not every Israeli, not every Jewish person, but this grouping, and what they've done to this country and lots of countries in the world, then I'm telling you, you're being dangerously, willfully ignorant. We're going to get to in a minute more points about the, like the point of the effigy discussion of what's going on with no kings. Like, if we get there, I'll wait to get to that. But screenshots reveal that after learning the IDF is luring American journalists into ambushes for Israelis to kill, the U.S. Embassy has refused to offer any assistance. And this is him posting it himself, guys. This is a guy reporting on the ground. His name's Jasper Nathaniel. He says, on the first day of the olive harvest, on October 19th, the Israeli Defense Forces leads a group of farmers directly into a brutal ambush by armed settlers. Now, you could argue that he just happened to be there, and they did that, which they do all the time. Allow these settlers to literally kill people, and the IDF will protect them when they try to fight back, or when like Palestinians try to fight back. So you could argue it was he just happened to be there, and they were going to go after the Palestinians. The point is, they knew he was there. An American journalist, their greatest ally, and they allowed him to almost get killed by these settlers. These people need to be in prison, he says, and the people of this village and all across Palestine need to be protected. Enough is enough. Here's a woman that they beat to the ground. Now, he posts this. The U.S. Embassy said that no, they cannot protect me. The U.S. government responded to a U.S. journalist who is in Israel, and they said, look, we can't do anything about it. They tried to kill me today. Sorry, too bad. So, this would be a major diplomatic crisis were it any other nation. Yeah, it sure as hell would be. But your government is either too afraid or too beholden to Israel to do anything about it. Or, that there's an American kid that's still stuck in Israel. Did you forget about that? Where did I put that? Son of a gun. We'll get to all this. This kid is still in Israel. He's a third-generation Florida American citizen. He is still being held in an Israeli prison for over 8 months now. Your government hasn't even commented on it. Well, save for this one person. Maybe I'm wrong on that because I haven't seen anybody, though. This is the first congresswoman that I've seen make a point about this. Good. And you'll notice it's somebody they're going to probably call a terrorist because she dares to point out what they're doing. We'll come back to it. But yes, it would be. If it was China, Iran, or anywhere else, they would scream forever. And rightly so, because it's a big deal. But they don't care. They don't protect Americans when they're in danger because Israel is in control, apparently. Here, here's the video he posted. Here's what he was saying to them. He says, just going to let this one speak for itself. Sure does.
I almost got killed yesterday when you did that. Yeah, you led me right up into an ambush. I almost got killed. 100 people chased me. You know that? You were right there and you left, and I got chased by 100 settlers trying to kill me. I could be dead. I could be dead.
Yeah. Listen, they want to investigate the assault.
Okay,
They
yeah.
need your help.
Yeah, you're going to be
Can you
investigated
help?
too, though, because you're part of it.
Can you help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was doing some propaganda.
Propaganda.
Yeah,
Yeah, I almost got
course.
killed yesterday.
Yeah,
Is that
but
propaganda?
So they start filming him. They're covering their faces. At first, he was trying to get him to put his phone down. You could tell. Like, this is what guilty people do. They are aware, in my opinion, that they are guilty, and two, that they know they have support. You know what it reminds me of? What ICE and people are doing right now in our country. The way that they're acting, the way that they're conducting themselves, because one, they know they're guilty, and two, they know they've got the backing of the empire. It's very clear to me.
You saw the video. You saw the video.
If we don't care, we just don't come here and try to protect you. But we care.
Oh, you
and
care.
we got the police to investigate.
So has he been
this
arrested
case.
yet? Has he been arrested yet? The guy who
We are
did it?
looking for him, and
Okay.
then he will arrest him.
Okay.
Of course.
That's not true.
Good. Good.
Those people are charged to take some DNA and all those things.
Yeah.
But without film.
Okay.
So, just in case you're not familiar, that never happens. Quite literally, these settlers are protected by the IDF at the barrel of a gun every single day. There's people out there that are in the West Bank that put videos up almost every day about the way that they're stealing land, burning olive trees, bulldozing homes, and that they're literally allowing that, protecting that, on top of the worst, on top of the burning of the homes and rape and torture and the most vile, sinister type of things, like vitriolic, like doing it for hatred. Like saying those things, right? Like anyway, I've done this long enough to be able to see so many things that it never leaves you. And not even getting into like the more not, violent, like just where he goes off. I don't take it. Somebody else will, right? Just coming right out and making it clear. Yes, we know we're doing it wrong, but you know what? I'm going to benefit before somebody else does from it. And then acting like you're the victim. So they're investigating, but nothing will ever come of it. Because if you want to look into the reality of what happens, that never actually happens. People will literally execute Palestinians. There's one where a guy got shot in the back walking away and they let him go. It happens every single day in this country. Here is a video that Mel posted of apparently the actual when it took place. So now what I want to point out, if you look, see how all these guys up here are, these are the settlers. Now you notice how they're all wearing like the wraps on their head. Like so they very much, when they want to, will dress up and try to present as Palestinian. Now, just to be clear, this is not, what happened here is very, very documented at this point, especially since the American journalist is screaming about it. So, just to understand the many different, and those are just a few of the most recent, the violations, the dishonesty from Israel about what they're trying to accomplish, and that the U.S. government, Donald Trump in particular, is happily selling whatever Netanyahu pushes out. Now, this is an interesting overlap. This is from yesterday. Israeli soldier Matan Ingerst, who was released by the resistance in an exchange deal. Hamas allowed me to pray and brought me to the Torah in Gaza. So just try to take a second and absorb that. And you overlap that with what? Now, look, I could easily point out that maybe they did that because they want that message to get out. Of course. Or they just aren't monsters. You can decide for yourself. But the point is, if all we are getting, which is all we've gotten thus far, are lies from Israel that are shockingly disproved, and then them lying about what they're doing, and then they get people come out and they go, they treated me kindly. They got me food. They literally protected my body with theirs when IDF bombs were raining down. That is 99% of the people that have come back. And the only 1% are people that came back and then changed what they said later, which I argue is under duress. I mean, I don't know how you explain it with everything else we can see. The woman, Lifshitz, the very first woman that came out, praised them. I mean, it's just kind of insane how where we are. And another Israeli soldier is saying that they not only allowed me to pray, they literally brought me a Torah to do so. Can you even for a second pretend? I mean, I don't even need to make the case. Anybody that's not a willful deceiver is going to say clearly that would not be allowed in Israel. And they'll tell you that. As he writes, once again, Hamas proves to be the more moderate than Israel by a long shot. You can decide if you think that, but you can't deny what we're looking at here. Or this kind of reality. And this is, it's funny how much you get to push back. It's what I opened with, by the way. Gabriel Mate, Aaron's father, who is a Jewish person himself, who's outspoken about what Zionism is. And he's telling you that they are a cult. It is a problem. And what he's saying is they will lie. They know they're lying, and they will say, that's what we see every day. You can get an entire 100% of the evidence, and they'll still pretend it's not there. Sort of like what the two-party illusion does in this country. I think there's an overlap to that. BM says, and this is an Israeli mainstream report, were there good moments in captivity? Like what? Asked the person who was in captivity in Gaza. When they took him for a day for fun on the beach. This is Channel 13. Danny Miran, father of freed Israeli captor Omri Moran, tells Ophira how his son talks only about the good things from his captivity. So I guess he's still drugged months later, right? Or days. The point is they drugged him beforehand. That's why they were smiling. You just can't keep lying about this, guys. I don't know. I honestly, even I think it doesn't seem to be what I would expect. But every single one of them is saying the same. Days on the beach, shopping. I mean, seriously? And yet they want you to believe this is the monster that you're fighting. Now, alternatively, here's somebody like John Spencer, who is he from? Chair of War Studies at Madison Policy Forum, who cites, yet again, rather this guy, who is an obvious propagandist, who then cites the MEMRI channel. But he says, I have said it many times, John writes, Hamas, according to multiple senior Hamas officials, what he means is the people on this Israeli-run platform who claim to be those things, or, well, I'll get to it in a second. And he goes, do not have a human shield, do not only have a human shield strategy, they have a human sacrifice strategy. Yeah, maybe, but no evidence has ever come to the table about that. And everyone's been trying to prove that and been caught lying about it. On the other hand, Israel has continually been shown to be the one doing that every single time. You can go back as far as you want to look. And since October 7th, 6 different times? Here's just that clip that I've shared many times. I don't know how people, again, we're arguing with people that already know they're wrong. 2013, Palestinian children tortured, used as shields by Israel, per the United Nations. Reuters. Israeli soldiers who used Palestinian boy, a 9-year-old, as human shield avoid jail. Defense for Children International, an international human rights group. Israel forces use 5 Palestinian children as human shields. That's 2023. This is from 2017. Generally, human shields. Since the beginning of the occupation in 1967, Israeli security forces have repeatedly used Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as human shields. Israeli soldiers routinely use Palestinian civilians as human shields by forcing them to carry out life-threatening tasks. It was also following a high court petition against this practice, which was filed by human rights organizations around the world in May 2002, that the IDF issued a general order prohibiting the use of Palestinians as a means of human shield against gunfire or attacks by the Palestinian side. But then it goes on to say, following the order, the use of human shields dropped sharply. However, the army did not construe as a human shield the use of Palestinians, provided they consented. The army continued the widespread use of this practice, which they referred to as the neighbor procedure. Following another petition filed by human rights organizations, the High Court of Justice ruled that this practice, too, violated international humanitarian law and that this thus was illegal. And guess what they've never stopped doing? Here is the Institute for Middle East Understanding, the neighbor procedure, Israel's use of Palestinian human shields from 2012. Human Rights Watch. During military operations, Israeli soldiers routinely coerced Palestinian civilians, including children, to perform life-endangering acts that assisted military operations, the practice known as the neighbor procedure. Now, see this? Now, I believe, I think it was the mosquito procedure was the newer one they started, but it's just insanely obvious, like almost everything about this conversation. Here's from 2024, weirdly before October 7th. Never mind. I was thinking about today. Nonetheless, you have examples going back, like I showed you. I think there were at least 4 in there that were from well before, but 2024. So this is during the ongoing genocide. Israeli forces in Gaza, quote, use civilians as human shields against possible booby traps, whatever the logic is. They tell you this is what they do. This is mainstream media even. Here is Haaretz from Israel. It's a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. Not exactly the right point. I thought that was different, but nonetheless, important to see. And, oh wait, let me make sure I got this too. Make sure you guys have these. Good. Always have the source material because that's how we roll. And the show we did, November 9th, 2023, the open secret of Israel's use of human shields. Just take a look at the picture that you can't deny, as well as every other time with this kid's arm literally belted to the front of their car, or the guy who was tied to the front of the Jeep in the middle of summer over the genocide time frame. I think it was, 7 months ago, and literally melted his skin on the front of the Jeep, and they used him as a human shield. All of this is provable. All of it is documented. Now, this guy posted this out, and he says, the call for the death of their own population achieves their political goal. And that's what this guy is saying. Hamas official said, Hamas is ISIS and is planning to establish the caliphate. Guys, that's the dumbest. This is such a great example of how we know for a fact that they're deceiving you. They're ideologically not the same thing. It doesn't even make sense. So what we should know is that MEMRI, this is what they're showing you right here. This platform is sorry, you could prove, even look it up on Wikipedia. It was founded and is currently run by Israeli intelligence, not former, literally current Israeli 8200, Unit 8200. Easily verifiable if you care to look. And the platform has been repeatedly caught lying. But I think you already know that, John. But I post this, I did this video in response to Loomer using the same platform, or Alice Jones using the same platform, or Elon Musk using the same platform. And isn't it funny how every time you get these major shift claims, it always comes from that weird Israeli intelligence run platform? What a coincidence. Guys, if you think for a second that Hamas would even, it's like saying as a Christian platform that we're a part of the Muslim overtaking. It's stupid. Now, it's much different, much more extreme. But to say that Hamas is like ISIS is insane, especially since Hamas is the reason ISIS isn't in these locations. And on top of that, and again, post a long time overlap, we have the Gaza gang, the ISIS-linked gangs that Israel has essentially allowed to populate. My point is that going back before, you could prove that ISIS was literally at odds with Hamas. There's public statements and provable reality. Anyway, it's just wild to see how often this happens, and their narrative is collapsing. I think most people are aware of this. So Trump, who either knows about that, doesn't care, or is being played by everybody, you can decide which one makes you more uncomfortable. Trump on the disarmament of Hamas. He says they promised they would disarm. They said they would. Well, let's not forget the proof that we showed you, mainstream coverage, the actual deal itself, that Trump allowed them to rearm, allowed them, the deal, not just Trump, but the deal, they all did, Israel, everybody. They allowed them to include that. So if their whole point was we can't allow them to exist and we can't allow them to have arm, well, what they did was literally make a point to allow that so they could point to it to then take the next step. Not hard to understand.
And yet, as soon as you left, Hamas executed 7 people, and then they went on.
Nope. I mean, again, it's left, right, doesn't matter. It is the narratives they put forward, and they're one thing. When it comes to the real agenda, sort of like the government.
To execute 30 more. Yeah. Do you believe they really will disarm?
Well, they promised they would. They said they would. It's down that they would. No, they said they were gang members.
Now, what he means is eventually, like, so the point was that, they're supposed to be able to control things with the police or whatever. And then at some point, with really not much definition, that they're supposed to be disarming and moving back. But they made sure to include them and made sure to insert that point many times over the many processes of Israel and Hamas going back and forth. And I think it's obvious that they need Hamas as the reason. Okay, if Hamas wasn't there right now, and let's just say there wasn't the obvious other choices of his Palestinian Islamic Jihad, because I guarantee that will be their next step if they have to. But let's just say it was just Hamas and Palestinians, and Hamas wasn't there. How are you going to make sense of this? How are you going to say, well, then that's obviously what they should be doing, bombing and executing and terror. So they need them as the scapegoat.
Et cetera, but gang members, et cetera.
Oh, here, hold on.
Well, they promised they would. They said they would. It's down that they would. No, they said they were gang members, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. They said you. Oh, so what he's saying, by the way, is they were ISIS-linked, Israel-controlled gang members. That's what happened, and I told you. So even Trump is admitting that. Now, what he's saying is Hamas said that. What I'm saying is you can prove that. Now, the only difference in that, or the only kind of sticky point, is that, well, some argue, Zionists would argue, that whole thing doesn't exist. There's no ISIS-linked gangs, except for Haaretz covering it and their Knesset discussing it, and Netanyahu going, what's wrong with that? But see, this is what always happens, right? So Trump says this, it needs to bring it all back around, that there are those gangs there, and they are being funded, because we can prove that, because Israel's admitted that, and Hamas is saying we killed them because that's run by Israel. It's very easy to see how this plays out. So Trump is basically letting you know that they know. He did that to kind of, well, they said gangs, whatever else. Well, yeah, that's what happened. And all they're doing is blaming Hamas because that's either what he's been told to do or he's in line with the agenda for Zionism.
Now, they said they were gang members, et cetera, you know. But these are very violent people. This is a very violent part of the world.
Oh, yeah. It's not like just the place is violent, right? No. The people that you allow to prosper, to control, are violent. Israel is the only reason all of this is happening. Now, that may anger some people, but you can very obviously see the perpetual ongoing war machine, the perpetual ongoing genocide victim machine that never stops. And it's the same point with the U.S. government. They do the same thing all over the world. Now, whether other things would happen by other groups if they were disappeared from the conversation, not calling for that. The point is, well, I am when it comes to what the people that are conducting this, but not like all Israel, all Jews. That never make that point. But if they were just vanished all of a sudden, well, I guarantee somebody would try to, probably the U.S. government would try to take more power. The point is, it would not be what we're dealing with here. Over and over and over throughout the years, there has been, for example, the offer up of let's have a nuclear-free Middle East. You could all argue they're all lying about it, but no, everybody except Israel said yes more than once, and then the U.S. shuts it down because Israel disagreed. Every time. Things like that stand out.
Nobody's seen violence like this. If we have to, we'll disarm
The
them.
U.S.
Well, whether it's me or the U.S. or it's, you know, a proxy, could be Israel with our backing.
Yeah, all right. So nothing has changed, in case you're missing that.
We won't have boots on the ground. There's no reason to.
You already do, though, and we can all prove that. So it's just lie upon lie upon lie. They had boots on the ground before that was posted on Twitter recently. We've talked about this. They just lie to you guys.
Is there a timeline to get
And then these ridiculous so-called journalists just kind of let it run right over the top of them. They have their marching orders too. They're not out there for the truth.
Hamas to disarm?
We won't have boots on the ground. There's no reason to.
Is there a timeline to get Hamas to disarm, in your mind?
Not a timeline, not a hard line, but we're going to see how it all works out.
I told you. So the point is, how are you at this point going, oh my God, they're not going to disarm, when you literally agreed that they could be armed and there's no time there's not some kind of clock running. So why would you immediately jump to, oh my God, they might disarm? How is that not the most transparent thing in the world? They allow them to do it and then gripe about the fact that it's happening, as if that's the reason they're in danger. Come on, guys. They're quite literally setting this up. And I think it's because they don't know what else to do.
Lived there for a long time. They're very violent. As you understand, you've been covering it for a long time.
Yeah, and we'll just leave out the fact that Israel funded them. You know, no big deal, though.
But we're going to find out. Don't forget, 50,000 of them have been killed, okay?
Right, and don't forget that 40,000 is what most people said pre-October 7th was about the most that they had. And the other day in a report, he said 70,000. And so all he's really doing is saying all those people, the numbers killed that they say are all the people killed in the Gaza war are all Hamas. Just like Israel was trying to do from day one forward. They're clumsy, guys. Just recognize that. It's not unique to point that out right now.
So they killed 1,200 people, and horrible, the October 7th.
Oh, it's still 1,200? We're still pretending like that was an accurate number, even though they already walked it back, even from Israel. On top of that, most of them were killed by the IDF, that literally everybody can prove at this point, as Haaretz has covered, as colonels in their military have admitted. You see, he knows these things. Or if he doesn't, that should really make you scared about who's in charge.
Attack. It was an attack. They killed 1,200, but...
All right. Now they said they're gang members, etc., but they're very bad. Right. Okay. Well, we know this, right? We talked about this on the 14th. Netanyahu, ISIS continues bombing Gaza during the ceasefire, and Netanyahu aims, this was the way I saw it, to swap ISIS-linked gangs for Hamas. Now, that was, I guess you could argue either way it's possible. Like, my point was simply that I think that represents something that they're funding and it's something that could easily stand in as what they want to be Hamas, or the group that they use as the counterbalance to Hamas, sort of like the PA, like, they've used this kind of game for a long time. Either way, these are the groups. These kind of groups, the Abu Shabaab overlap, the GHF, these are the people that they're working with. And Trump knows that. That's what Hamas is taking out. And they're just, and then, of course, blowing themselves up on a bomb and then blaming everybody else. It's pretty clear what's happening. Benny Johnson, of course, coming in with the mainstream alternative media slant that gives you pro-Israel talking points, says Trump is not playing games with Hamas. Well, why is Trump even okay, they agree to something, right? See, Israel violates it all over the place, but the point is that you have an agreement they made, and you're saying Hamas. But I get the point is that Trump not playing it. Why is Trump even over here saying these things? If we're to believe this is agreement between Israel and the United States and Qatar and the rest of the ones mediating, Trump is just always playing the game like he's the one, totally not involved, right? I'm just an innocent bystander, but at the same time, I'm also always in control of what's happening. You can't have it both ways, bud. And at the end of the day, he is absolutely involved because he's a co-belligerent or literally conducting the genocide, just like Biden was. It's not hard to recognize. But he goes, listen to this scorching warning he just sent them, as usual. Yay, what he said. The thing he did today is the greatest I've ever seen in my life. Thanks, Benny.
Time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to.
Oh, yeah. Is that the deal? That's how it wrote down, right? We'll behave like good children, but if we don't do what Trump likes, they'll eradicate us. We'll sign that. They're such children. The way that they act, the way that and do you not recognize how that's filtering through the conversation? All the different childish actions and the petty words and we're basically being run by a bunch of meme PR kindergarten level mindsets. It's pretty embarrassing. Now, look, you can do whatever you want, but you don't have to be Mr. Adult all the time. The point is that this is like embarrassing for everybody. You're showing a level of ignorance, a level of naivety. It's not just being able to curse. It's like it's a shocking level of immaturity that is completely across this. Some of the most influential 1 million+ followers on Twitter, most of his cabinet. It's pretty sad. And so this kind of the praising is just this hyperbolic framing of how he's just going to go in there and beat them all up if they don't do what I want. And then nothing happens in that way at all. And he says it again tomorrow.
Eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, and I don't believe it was the leadership, but they had some rebellion in there among themselves, and they killed some people.
I mean, he's just the guy. He's literally nowhere. That's nowhere. What these weird little insertion points, he's just acting like he has insight. The reality is, on one side, they're arguing there was a munition, or rather that Hamas came out of tunnels and attacked them with an RPG, I guess, in some stories. Over here, you've got the reality of them rolling over munition that they probably didn't know was there, killing themselves and blaming Hamas. He just kind of inserts these different points to make it sound in some kind of an internal coup, and it's just frustrating because these are the kind of data points that get spread across Twitter. Oh, we just talked about this on Fine Points. And you guys have probably seen, Bannon made this point, flooding the zone, right? That's a lot of what's happening today. They're just literally bombing the conversation with so much BS, knowing that it makes them look stupid to some degree, but it's about completely overwhelming the conversation with trying to show how they're lying, which in some cases is important. I do it every day. But in order to basically muddy the waters.
A lot of people. But this is a violent group. You probably noticed over the last 100 years, this is a very violent group of people.
100 years. See, he's just dumb. I know, what are you trying to say? It doesn't even matter.
And they got very rambunctious, and they did things that they shouldn't be doing. And if they keep doing it, then we're going to go in and straighten it out, and it'll happen very quickly. And
yeah, didn't he say that in the beginning? Over in day one, he says it about everything, and then it doesn't matter if he follows through. Something happened. The Democrats wouldn't let him. Same thing left us.
Pretty violently, unfortunately.
So, here's another one. Decentered News says, and this is what Trump was saying about peace in the Middle East.
Mr. President, you just alluded to the violence in the Middle East. What steps is the administration taking to maintain the ceasefire?
Well, a lot of steps, and right now it's in the hands of others. We have 59.
Oh, did you get that? A lot of steps. Moving on. Every time.
Well, a lot of steps, and right now it's in the hands of others. We have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have peace in the Middle East for the first time ever.
I mean, are you really? I mean, come on, guys. Can we not just laugh at how dumb that is? This is about presenting the fake idea that we're all supposed to pretend we see. The emperor wears new clothes, right? Oh my God, it looks so great, right, Benny? Right, Nick Jones? Oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Winning every single day. Peace in the Middle East. I mean, at least you could argue that we have positive momentum. That's not true, but at least you could get away with that lie. This is just meant to be seen as a lie. Or he just, I don't know. I can't place it in my mind where somebody could think that that would benefit them in any way other than to do it to just kind of disgruntle and undermine the other side. But when, you know, my thought about the bigger picture of what the government does. So I don't know. It may very well be today. Every day I feel a little bit more that these people may just not even truly know what's going on, which is just crazy. But sometimes that feels like the most obvious solution or answer, that they're just being allowed to think they're influential and in control, and they're not. But I just a thought. I don't really think that in the bigger picture because it's hard to see. You know, my point is, they know they're committing crimes. It's not meant to be that they're, you know, removed from accountability, but peace in the Middle East. Gosh, I mean, like, okay, Gaza is obviously horrendous right now. They're still bombing Lebanon. Syria is overrun with the very people they claim they're fighting. The ones that they support, that they put there, who they had a bounty on that they removed to allow them to take over the country. I mean, you could go off in about 6 other places. This is insane, and it's an insult to your intelligence.
We made a deal with Hamas that, you know, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go in, we're going to pretty a lot of people, and pretty violently, unfortunately, signed on to this deal. The way I view it, 59 countries signed on to this deal. The way I view it, 59 countries, and unanimous. There's never been, nobody ever believed us. Right? Countries that 4 months ago didn't like each other, and now they're...
Yeah, you know, regime change tends to do that.
All aligned together. I mean, we've had countries
and they're not,
me
by
when
the
they
way,
saw
not even close.
Some of the killing with Hamas, saying we'd love to go in and take care of the situation ourselves.
Yeah, just like in the beginning was like, please, Trump, make a deal with me. And then they all said that wasn't true. The guy is the bluster. That's what he is. It's what he is and what he does.
In addition, you have Israel would go in 2 minutes if I asked him to go in. I could tell him, go.
Yeah, and you know what? They have been and they haven't stopped. But with his worldview, he's in control, making deals, and he's the one letting everybody know what they're allowed to be doing. And as you're pretending that, they're killing children right now.
Go in and take care of it. But right now, we haven't said that. We're going to give it a little chance, and hopefully there will be a little less violence. But right now, you know, they're violent people. Hamas has been very violent. But they don't have the backing of Iran anymore. They don't have.
No, they didn't before, by the way. I mean, it just came to all the fun, you know, because Netanyahu wants you to think that. Like, think about the bigger picture of how long he's been pointing at Iran and how often they've been caught lying. And here we are doing the same old dance. Remember the beginning when they kept Vance and all the rest? They came out hot with this Iran points. And then they, you know, peace president, they put it away. I mean, it's inevitable at this point. Unless we as Americans do something, that's where this is going next.
Have the backing of really anybody anymore. They have to be good. And if they're not good, they'll be eradicated.
I mean, it's just the language. That is the language of an authoritarian dictator. See, this interesting point we'll get to maybe today, maybe possibly tomorrow with time, about the whole no kings overlap and literally the provable reality that there was zero, like every event of violence that is documented, even by Grok, were done by the counter protesters. You could look it up for yourself. Stealing a flag from them, punching them in the face, like spraying them. It's just kind of insane. But we'll get to that if we get to. My point is, and we will, but maybe not today, depending on time, is, you know, it's just this, I'll get pulled into it. We'll come back to that point in general. But overall, back to what's going on here with the deal. He says, with that last part, well, just well, that's what I was saying. Just that's where I was at that point. It's just the rhetoric. It's authoritarian, right? I mean, it's dictatorial. It's what you're doing. So the whole thing with no kings and all that, I had a weird thought about, you know, that almost meant to be no violence, so that they could then go what we've been hearing, right? That, oh, we see it building and we just don't know how to stop it. Just like they were saying about the right. But now it's the other way around, right? They're not breaking the rules. They're acting within their rights just barely. So we have to change those rights. It's how we get the lefties. There's a sense there. I think that's part of what this is. We'll come back to it. Now, back in the overarching point, he was telling you, we're going to go in there and eradicate them if they don't do what they're told, like they're a bunch of 6th graders, right? Well, guess who's in Israel? Vance, because that totally lines up. Oh, and Kushner, because apparently he lives there now. The point is, I'm kind of joking. The point is, guys, why does it make sense for them to be constantly revolving in and out of Israel? Is that America first? Does that even make sense for just a normal government? I mean, what's happening right now is in your face. So remember what we just told you about Hamas continuing to do all the things they're doing. And here's what Vance is doing, like he's told. These people are not on your side.
Just to follow up on what you were just saying, how much time does Hamas have to lay down its arms before the United States either takes dramatic action or authorizes its allies to do so?
Well, look, the president actually put out a truth this morning that I thought was very instructive. We know that Hamas has to comply with the deal, and if Hamas doesn't comply with the deal, very bad things are going to happen.
But Israel can. They can bomb and lie and cheat and steal, and that's okay. But Hamas has to do it, every time.
But I'm not going to do what the President of the United States has thus far refused to do, which is put an explicit deadline on it, because a lot of this stuff is difficult. A lot of this stuff is unpredictable. You basically have two regions in Gaza, one of which is relatively safe, I wouldn't say very safe, and one of which is incredibly dangerous, and part of ensuring that
realize that he just literally admitted they're violating the deal? Like the deal itself was allowed people to go back to parts they were in northern Gaza in particular. The entire side of northern Gaza is blocked off by that whole yellow line. So you must understand, they're not dumb to that degree. They know what they're doing. He's willfully admitting to you in an kind of side way he's just trying to cement into the idea of your mind that line is permanent and that's part of the deal. No, they did that on purpose. And I don't even see people in standing calling that out, like people in the UN who must know, who can read, can't they? That shows you something.
we get to a durable peace is to broaden the scope of the area that's safe. And the International Security Force is a big part of that. We don't yet have the International Security Force set up. That's something we're working towards. We have a number of volunteers, and the International Security Force is a big part of that. And one of which is incredibly dangerous, and part of ensuring that we get to a durable peace is to broaden the scope of the area that's safe.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. So what he just said was the yellow area where Palestinians are not allowed is what's going to broaden out to everywhere else. I mean, they're literally just telling you what we've all been saying. And that means there's no place for Palestinians, because if they cross that line, they're being shot. And that's what Israel's been telling you from the very beginning. If you're not a complete brain dead moron, and listen to what they tell you every single day. I'm sorry, I get frustrated with it. It's so overwhelmingly obvious. It's tiresome.
The International Security Force is a big part of that. We don't yet have the International Security Force set up.
Right. So International Security Force, meaning occupation, never stopping. Or just, they're going to pretend, I guess, this is Gaza, Palestine, whatever they want to call it, just, without Palestinians. That seems to be where this is going.
That's something we're working towards. We have a number of volunteers who want to participate in that International Security Force. So my point is, I don't think it's actually advisable for us to say this has to be done in a week, because a lot of this work is very hard.
That always has to happen, by the way. And we've said this from the very beginning. If you do not set the deadline, it never happens, especially with the U.S. and Israel involved. When you know they plan to violate it and have in every other. I mean, I made this point back when they were doing it in Yemen with Saudi Arabia. It's always the same dynamic. They take advantage. They pretend they did it. They take advantage. They push a little further. It's exactly what's happening now.
Security Force. So my point is, I don't think it's actually advisable for us to say this has to be done in a week, because a lot of this work is very hard. It's never been done before. And in order for us to give it a chance to succeed, we've got to be a little bit flexible.
There's never been a peace deal before. There's never been a demarcation. There's never been, what he's doing right there is trying to press the idea that Trump is unprecedented in what he did. He's not. He hasn't even done it, is what's going on.
I think what you're seeing from our Gulf Arab friends, certainly from our Israeli friends, is a certain amount of impatience with Hamas, but we're going to keep on working at this process, and we're going to keep on trying to bring the deceased hostages home, but also make sure that all Gazans are able to live in a prosperous and safe place.
Yeah, except that's an utter lie, because right now they're bombing them. Right now, right? What they're doing is killing and starving and attacking, and everything you allow is the removal of Palestinians from their own territory. But he knows that, guys. Again, these people are actively fighting for something that is not the United States. White House. Donald Trump posts this tweet, whatever you call it. It says, or Truth has numerous of our now great allies in the Middle East and areas surrounding the Middle East have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, informed me that they would welcome the opportunity, at my request, of course, because he's completely in control all the time, to go into Gaza with a heavy force and straighten out Hamas. straighten our Hamas. See that? If Hamas continues to act badly, God darn it. So he's just going Muslims and their things, and they can go in, they'll take care of it. I mean, he's playing to the worst people in this country. With everything he does, he's playing at the most divisive, at the most manipulative, at the most hateful and bigoted. That's why Loomer seems to be able to guide policy half the time. Think about how terrifying that is. With straighten our Hamas, aside from Israel funding them to divide Palestine, the whole story, the love and spirit for Middle East has not seen like this in 1,000 years. It makes you sick, doesn't it? This is my point all the time. It's one thing to be a killer. It's something specially evil to kill and then go praise me. Look at what I did. Not a genocide. I helped everybody. You literally are committing genocide and calling on everyone to call you a hero. There is something beyond evil in all of that. And he writes, there is still hope that Hamas will do what is right as they're continually being bombed by, the same old, same old. On top of all of that, might want to understand who the U.S. government's working with in case you haven't been paying attention this whole time. Another report came out from the Canary.co. Major Sean Glass, a U.S. Navy SEAL who joined the IDF, has been named as the man who ordered the murder of Henry Job and caused 355 bullets to be put into her. Here's the article you can read. Here's a post. I don't think I downloaded it for time, but I will include it. It's a horrifying new investigation. What's Hidden is Greater, it's called, reveals the Israeli soldiers and officers directly involved in the killing of the 6-year-old named Henry Job, her family, and the ambulance crew that tried to rescue her after that. Among them, officers from Israel's 401st Armored Brigade, including Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Ella and Major Sean Glass, who allegedly ordered the tank fire on the family car in Gaza City. The one they keep lying about, even though there was a ballistics report coming. I mean, they not only prove this by their communications, by different, the munitions they pulled and the only place they could have come from, like tank bull. Nobody else has tanks, guys. It's just undeniable. And then they lie about it. And Trump covers it up. And Biden covers it up. Well, on top of that, just like happened with her, here's an example of what they do every single day. A member of the IDF shoots a child, and then his terrorist friends come in and block the ambulance to make sure the child dies. That may sound insane to you if you're not paying attention, but this happens every day. They literally make sure that people that are rushed away trying to be saved are not allowed to go, block them up, refuse, hold them at gunpoint. That's not a secret, guys. They want to make sure the people that they shoot, actually die. Now, here's an example for Twitter as well. I'll refresh this just to make sure you see it. Look, apparently that post is unavailable. Make the same point every time. It's not some weird nuance, guys. It is deliberate. Now, had Omar forgotten to post the link, and like I said last time, simply retweeted it, it wouldn't even be showing and you wouldn't know where to look. But like I keep showing people, when you post the link, even from them, they downgrade it because they don't want you to be able to flow through. They want you to go where they aim. Algorithmic channeling. Here's the post they're trying to hide from you. It was the one from before. Nothing encapsulates the Zionist settler colonial project more than this photo taken by Jasper Nathaniel, the one we were referencing, in the West Bank today. These were the guys that were beating people up in front of him, that were chasing him and almost killed him. And his own government said, we don't care. An Israeli settler standing over a Palestinian woman that he's beaten with a club because she dared to harvest her own olive trees. That's what this post is that Twitter hides from you. If there was an image of a Palestinian clubber clubbing an elderly Israeli woman in the head and knocking her unconscious, it would be on every single network as a main story. But the racist and often murderous brutality directed at Palestinians is deemed unworthy of attention. Max, this account, one of these many manipulative Zionist propaganda accounts. This is a video coming from UN BBC report about the UN humanitarian aid. Let me play it first.
Describe what is on those trucks. This is baby food, baby nutrition. There are 14,000 babies that will die in the next 48 hours unless we can reach them. This is not food that Hamas are going to steal. No, we run the risk of looting. We run the risks of being hit as part of the Israeli military offensive. We run all sorts of risks trying to get that baby food through to those mothers who cannot feed their children right now because they're malnourished.
14,000 babies in 48 hours is an extraordinary figure.
It's chilling. It's utterly chilling.
Yeah. Those are numbers you can actually verify, not like the nonsense you get spit out by Pete Hegseth and Holman and Bondi and Noam. And I can literally prove to you they're just making up off the top of their head.
But this is what
or I should say organized lies, but same difference.
We do. We keep going. It will be frustrating. We will be impeded. We will run huge risks. But I don't see a better idea than getting that baby food in to those mums who at the moment cannot feed their own kids.
UN humanitarian chief has said 14,000 babies in Gaza could die in the next 48 hours if they don't get the food going the way. And that's what Trump is saying. We're everything's good. They are doing this. They stop. Remember, don't forget what Ryan Groom was telling you. The point is that they said they were going to stop it. They did stop it. And his allegation from his inside source, question it, but it lines up with what I know, said from the U.S. government, we know you're doing this. We know what actually happened. And then they brought some of it back. Now, my point again was that I tend to think that they want you to see something like that. But either way, they changed. They stopped. They went back, but they only brought back a little bit. And so the reality is they're trying to continue to starve them while trying to be praised for it like they do every time. But Max comes out and says, quotes them, 14,000 babies that will die. He says, here's a video of international criminal Tom Fletcher telling the lie of the century, prison. Now, you heard what I just played, right? What does that sound like what you would call someone a criminal or call for them to go to prison for saying Israel's starving children? Well, maybe from a rabid Zionist. But I said the worst part is that you know you're lying. And about starving children, no less. And I tell you that you're a vile person, but something tells me you already know that and simply don't care. Here's Ben Gvir from the Israeli government. I congratulate the prime minister's decision to stop the humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. This aid should not be renewed. The war, yes, and as soon as possible. That's what Ben Gvir wrote on the 19th. Then Max comes out on the 20th and then lies for him because apparently that's the Zionist thing to do. About children being starved to death. People like this need to be seen for what they are. Now, lies around this as well. Here's General Mike Flynn sharing literally from the Israel Foreign Ministry account, using a lie that has been debunked 75 times as far as I can tell. Here are these, he says, these are the girls who can get pregnant. And realize this is the 2024 post. So it's the old post. That, again, if you haven't seen this, I touched base with Robert about this. They're lying. That's not what the translation is. They literally made this up. And there, I'm sure you can find all the many different coverages down there, but we cover this at the time. This is Israel knowingly lying about women who weren't raped. You can prove that. You know why? Because every single one of them is now home. And all of them are telling you that, including the one with the gray pants that they all used to claim everybody was raped. How disgusting that is. The idea that they are willing to lie so grotesquely about something so serious. And General Mike Flynn says this is what savages look and act like. He's talking about the Hamas members who didn't do what he's claiming in apparently in any of these contexts. It says these are not humans who treat young girls like this. Well, I agree, Mike, but you're aiming in the wrong direction because what we can prove is littered across the Zionist agenda. And it says these are not people you can make peace with. I mean, just think about what you're doing right now. And it says there will be no peace while savages exist with treat young girls like this. Well, you're right, bud. Look at who's doing it. Look at who you're not pointing to, who can prove, who has been doing this since its inception. And if you think I'm talking about Jews, you're just not paying attention. There's an overlap for sure. And it says, show this video to Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And he says, I'm sorry, but I guarantee these young women were brutalized while in captivity. This is Mike Flynn on the 20th of October when you can prove these women are home right now. And they weren't. Isn't it just weird? And Neil says the translation has been endlessly debunked and you shameless Zionist crook, he called him. He says the Arabic terms are being misrepresented and mistranslated. Here are some actual Israeli terrorism for you to comment on as they're rushing after the journalist. It's everywhere, guys. It's desperate. It's vulnerable. How do we not see that? They're lying people like that to your face. Here's Aviva Klampus with everything we know And she comes out and says, in a surprise to nobody, it turns out there's no data to prove starvation in Gaza. These are the worst people I've ever had to come across in my life. And of course, let's take a look at the actual article, because we're not morons like they are in reverse. Because for me to ignore the article, even though I know they're lying, would be just as dumb as them, right? So we look, and guess what we find? First of all, Gaza famine claims face mounting scrutiny as mortality data falls short. Okay, so she can't even lie. It's you know what? It's exactly the Zionist lie. It's the way they, instead of coming out and going, turns out the experts are claiming the data is not entirely there, she has to come out and say, no data. The article that you point to quite literally says that there's some. You are in, I mean, I don't even, it's just almost, we just need to laugh at these people, but it's so serious, and what they're involved with is horrifying. So then from there, one expert is questioning the veracity of claims. Oh, so there is data, tons of it, but he just questions it. See how dumb these people are? But on top of that, they're literally talking about the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, like the group to go to for classification of famine. And on top of that, the data they're pointing to has been roundly seen and discussed and evaluated by the whole effing world at this point. David Adesnik, vice president of, guess what? Foundation for Defense of Democracy. Like you didn't see that coming. An a literal insider, he might as well globalist, technocrat, Zionist, guys. Just think about how insane this is. That they're trying to gaslight you into thinking that they're not starving to death by pointing to somebody who has an interest in lying to you about everything they're doing. On top of that, that she lies about the article's very point. That is desperation, guys. Maybe you want to know why. Here's one of many reasons. And this is Scott Horton telling you what you probably already know.
Might be the most Zionist president of the United States in history, but he might be the last one, because Israel is going to be permanently controversialized now. It's the most criminal regime in the world, and they are a dead letter, name is mud on the left, and more on the right all the time. It's something like 50-50 on the right now. People are sick and tired of being lied to and condescended to and used and abused in this way. I mean, for all the people listening to this or watching this, I think Benjamin Netanyahu respects you. And this is a guy who has said on multiple occasions, in fact, on September 11th, he told the New York Times, good for Israel. This is very good.
I mean, it's just one video, but if you've been paying attention to this platform and plenty of others, I mean, guys, the evidence is overwhelming. People like John Kirkow or, I mean, any number of people that are either insider government people or people from the CIA and intelligence, people from, I mean, every one of them. Wilkerson, they lie and it's so obvious right now. And as this person wrote, the residents, just quoted what he said, American radio host, author Scott Horton, who you should pay attention to. And here's Benny Johnson with the facts, or just screenshotting, quoting what Trump said. And he says, numerous of our now great allies. Fantastic. Numerous of our great allies in the Middle East and areas surrounding the Middle East have explicitly and strongly with great enthusiasm informed me that they would welcome the opportunity at my request, the same one we heard before, to go in and take out Hamas, the group that you allowed to be armed and now point to as the problem because they're armed. Benny says, President Trump says multiple Middle Eastern nations are on standby to wipe out Hamas if the terror group continues its aggression. Just, making it sound like we're in charge and everything's going as planned. So, lastly, Brianna Joy Gray simply points out, if you don't already understand why aren't you cheerleading the ceasefire? I mean, well, let me finish. Why that trend being propagated by many people and other establishment pundits is cruel, bad faith Hasbara. I hope this exchange makes it clear, and I'll read it to you. But even when that first started, it's sort of like it comes to mind actually, like with Tyler Robinson, for example, where first thing they yelled was lefty terrorist boomer. We knew it, and then it wasn't the guy they pointed to, and they just kept saying that, and then it just became the other guy, and the narrative didn't even blink. Well, then that clearly shows you that they were going to yell that no matter what, right? So in the same case, they come out immediately and they go, why aren't you all celebrating the ceasefire? That wasn't happening, that they were clearly still bombing. And on top of that, it wasn't an end of the war. And not everybody in this is like, ceasefire only. Okay, it's over. They're going, we want a state for Palestine. We want self-determination for Palestinians. We want an end to the, and it's just such a dishonest framing, but they all did it. Ben Shapiro and the Israeli government. Why aren't you all celebrating? They really wanted to like shove everybody into that stage so they could just pretend like it was over. But this, and remember, that was in the beginning, and then 5 days in, they're still bombing. They're still, it just kind of became really dumb, and they did kind of stop. But it picked up again once Trump is yelling things again. And this person says, I get messages, Sammy Obeid, I get messages like this all the time, but rarely am I gifted with it coming from a comedian with multiple allegations. So this person says, and I love this, for this is the reason I want to show you this. I get this kind of stuff all the time. And this is why I always point this out to you as, the kind of person that comes in the comments or the chat and goes, I've listened to you for 30 years and now I can see that you're always been a liar. And it's like, well, I've been only doing this for 20 or says something about what you always do that you've never done. It's a tactic. I think and look, there are people that may do that or may think that about me. Let's say that's for you all to decide. But my point is there are ones that are very deliberate and about trying to like scare away the new people. Going, oh, I think he might be a deceiver. I'm going to go somewhere else. And so it starts like this. September 16th, he says, dude, you're such a classy guy and a huge truth teller. It's so admirable to watch. That's it. So what that's meant to do, in my opinion, based on all this, is that he's trying to make him think I'm on your side. The next post is, and this was, I guess, I don't know, looks like couple weeks later. He goes, yo, dude, is your family free yet? I know you were so concerned about the genocide in Gaza, so was wondering if you were excited that it's over. Is your family fatter or skinnier after apartheid? Do they still have roof, or are they rubble cuddling at night? I haven't seen you post a peep about the ceasefire, so I feel uneasy that you haven't weighed in yet. Hope they're all safe and fine, but clearly with a bunch of little slights in there, right? But his whole point was to try to kind of manipulate, I guess, like, I don't even know. Like I think that they get the sense that these people are of the mind that they're on the right side. This person says, you IDF or something? What is this? And he goes, I want answers. As I watch your intellectually dishonest Jew-hating post, you see, and then automatically goes hard because he gets called out. Now you can talk about a ceasefire, so why don't you? Right, because it's not happening, moron. And it says, when I met you years ago, you told me that we were from Lebanon. It just goes on about it. The point is, and he goes, oh, wait, aren't you the comic who raped? And he goes, yeah, of course you believe that. And it's just funny that he posted it could be, who knows, you can look into Adam Richman and the thing for me is the effort to try to go, hey, we're on the same side. We're on the same team, just to kind of manipulate. But overall, that there is no ceasefire. And these people are literally like hounding people to get them to go, yay, that seems like an effort of propaganda to me. At the same time, what about the hostages, guys? Hashtag release the hostages.
The military is still holding about 9,000 Palestinians in what it calls security prisoners or detainees. Only about 1,000 of them have actually been convicted of any crime. The vast majority of people being held are being held without trial, either in what's called administrative detention for the West Bank or the unlawful combatants law for folks from Gaza.
Now, here's the thing, guys. This is undeniably obvious. It's been publicized 100 times over, from the UN to every human rights group. It's been debated and discussed and denied. It's been there forever. These people have been way before October 7th. So what's so frustrating to people, that anybody who's honest, is that this is easily proven. And yet, what do? You get the lies from CNN, you get the lies from Fox, you get the lies from the mainstream, you get the lies from the mainstream alternative media. And they all just kind of parrot. What they do is they pretend like they're on different sides of the argument, but they control the narrative in a certain way. So you'd never get that kind of a picture. Right? It's either Hamas all terrorists or Hamas fighting for freedom, but both. I guess that doesn't make sense. But my point is, whatever you break it down to, the different narratives from within the two-party illusion. But at the end of the day, the real truth is that they've held them the entire time. They have all these Palestinians. They're locked them all up. They're no charge, torturing them in prison, raping them in prison. But it's just lie upon lie upon lie from both sides of the false controlled conversation.
That means that there's no allegation that they've committed a crime. They're being held on a charge of dangerousness that is backed by secret evidence that neither they nor their lawyers can either see or challenge.
So it's a joke.
It is an arbitrary system in which every day, including yesterday, the Israeli military is rounding up more and more Palestinians from the West Bank now.
See, this is what I keep trying to tell everybody, guys. They do this every time. So even if they did let some people go, they just scoop them all back up because they're all just tokens for them on this game board. That's how they see it. And while they're in there, they're torturing and raping and manipulating them. And half the time they scoop up the same people back That's a violation of the deal. They don't care because no one's going to call it out other than them. And if they do, they're called terrorists and liars.
And just refilling those detention and prison cells where people are subject to serious abuse.
Yep. Just refilling them. Just going right back to what it was before. Every time. Again, as we're talking about hostages, does nobody care? I know you guys do. Does nobody in the mainstream? Benny Johnson, Alex Jones? Do you guys care that a Florida U.S. citizen who was third generation, his family, he was born in Florida, is in a prison in Israel? Guys, make a big deal about this. Shove this in front of them with every single thing they post. Why are you not talking about an American citizen, Mr. America First? Why haven't you called out Donald Trump? Why haven't you called out the government or anybody? Why don't then make it about the lefties who are still in there if you think that makes a difference? Call out the American child who's being held without charge in an Israeli prison. How much you want to bet they'll never point to it? And if they do, it'll be some kind of a weird sidestep or try to make an allegation about his family, something, which none of it matters because they're not even charging him with anything. They're saying he threw a stone and they're keeping him in prison. He's lost, what was it, 10, 20 pounds? He has scabies because that's what the kind of places they're living in, which it's just overwhelming, guys. And I'm surprised to see this. Congressman Ayanna Pressley. So again, you know my mind. I mean, it's going to be a long time of consistent right actions before I see it as anything but opportunism, but it doesn't matter to me. It's about, look, they called it out. Good for them. Share it. Give them reach. The reality is Mohammed Ibrahim, a U.S. citizen, is being held in an Israeli prison. His health is deteriorating and the circumstances are desperate. The United States must use every avenue available to secure the release. You know who hasn't commented on this? Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Vance, Hegseth, Bondi, Kash Patel, Bongino. Every one of their Zionist U.S. America First cabinet doesn't care that an American citizen is being tortured in a prison in a foreign government for no charge. Like, yes, throw a stone, but they didn't. It's an administrative detention for a never-ending point. That's what they do. They make an allegation. They don't go to court. They sit in prison forever. In the beginning, post-October 7th, there are people that were released in that first exchange that were in prison for 20 years with never have a charge. People that went in as children who came out. It's just, it gets to you, man. Well, Omar El Ayat points out the story of a 15-year-old American kid that's been held without charge in horrific conditions since February has been completely ignored by the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, mainstream outlets, Fox News, OAN. Like, you can go across the board. Left and right, mainstream alternative are not talking about it. Why? Because they're all part of the same problem. And of course, here's what I said before, Megyn Kelly. Here's what she's actually saying right now. We need a full Muslim immigration ban before we lose our country. Because it's Muslims, right? I mean, how is this any different than saying the Jews are the problem? It's not, you see, because it meets the same agenda. It's culture war. It's divide and conquer, guys. This is insane and ignorant and bigoted. The idea that every Muslim, so, this is my point. I said, like I said, with the Jewish conversation. So, those neighbors have a child and their religion is Judaism. That somehow makes that kid inherently problematic. I mean, it's a special kind of like mind rot that we talk about with it's not one religion or the other. It's people who then broad stroke about all of it. Can you make points about certain elements of the extreme parts of that? Yes, just like with Judaism, just like with Christianity. Oh, no, you can't say it about my one. Yeah, it is the same if we're honest about it. And there's extreme versions of that. Look at what you can go back through history and look at how the extreme elements of the way people decide to interpret the Bible, or elements in the same of the Quran, or elements, and you could make this point everywhere. And if you want to make an argument about one being more than the other, sure, do it. You can't then argue that every single average person living in the United States who decides to be Muslim or Jew is a problem because of that. You just can't. It's ignorance, guys. And the point is, this is what we're now seeing. And it even goes back to the idea that Trump's Muslim ban, they swore up and down, was totally not that. They're like, yeah, we want that again. And it's this quote, one thing we don't want here in America is a ton more Muslims immigrating into the United States. Sorry, but we don't. In the UK, I think that these people actually think that they're in the majority. Actually believe that they're speaking to what I think people like her are caught. Well, I shouldn't say it like that. I think Tucker and her, that kind of element, are probably much more part of the lie. Overall, my question, I guess, is whether or not they are just trapped in their own kind of echo chamber about this. because it's pretty obvious to see. I mean, at the very least, you can argue half of the political mainstream conversation doesn't think that in a general, most likely sense. And so then what we're talking about is the rest, and even from the right, I know plenty of people that are very much Trump supporters that aren't ridiculously disgusting and saying something like that. And so there's a mix, but then the rest of it, I argue people who are not going to be pulled into these hyperbolic, emotional, like division tactics. And that's why I think most of them are sort of like outside the political game, because they are starting to see it and have for a long time. But this is reprehensible. To argue that isn't this, and by the way, isn't this literally counter to the foundational ideas of this country? Yeah, but America first. Sad. Now, unfortunately, I am going to have to cut it short today, but I'm going to go into a few more things before we wrap. Let me bring this up really quickly. So what we're going to get into here, and I'll give you kind of a quick, insight on what we're going to get into 99% tomorrow. That's the plan, by the way. So here is what I have lined up. So what we're going to get into, and it's quite a bit more, and that's again why I just did it, how the two-party illusion ushers in authoritarian government, because this is mostly what we're getting into here. I'll point to some of it, but what I really specifically will get into is the conversation of the two-party illusion, the division that they're playing into, the idea like the No Kings protest, the lack of violence, the Antifa lie, the ICE overlap, and this is not about the left-right kind of lie. It's about the reality of both sides are misrepresenting the full picture for exactly what always seems to happen. We're going to talk about the Soros conversation. We're going to get into a lot of this stuff. Now, I'm not, again, most likely not all tonight. I'm going to do a little bit right now, but you know how that goes. Sometimes I get pulled back into it, but I am going to have to break off here pretty soon. Now, the point, White House. We're built different. Have a good night, everyone. And literally showing a picture that they posted of both of them in, royal crowns. Now, look, I think anybody can acknowledge that that's partly them trolling people that are reacting to that. But in and of itself, that's really juvenile. And it's the White House posting this. It's just embarrassing to anybody who's not a complete child, I would argue. And it looks dumb to the rest of the world. We look like we're children, right? But the point is not even about that. Because I'm not going to go argue, look, they posted a crown, they're kings. But you could make the argument, as many are, and I don't even disagree, that the amount of power that they're wielding is arguably more than many kings in the past situations. And that's not hard to recognize. But I still wouldn't argue that that's where we are because of the different mechanisms that are in place still. But if you can't see the obvious authoritarian left or right, is the point, Biden or Trump, how our government is screaming in that direction. And whether you're left or right, or it was now, or just that an argument that we don't want that kind of authoritarian controlled structure is obvious and doesn't need to only happen on one day that we already do it on January 4th. That's the dumbest argument in the room. People should be able to protest whatever they want, especially if we all recognize that both sides, just your government, is driving in that direction. But you got both sides trapped in their ideological bubbles, and they fight against the other side trying to make something happen. And what does that do? It stops anything from happening, which is pretty much how that works. And of course, they post this picture with them in sombreros. Again, they're just trying to make people angry, which this is the point as always, guys. Are you the president of the country or the Republicans? Now, they always love to go, we are trying to unify. That's not unifying. Just like the left is not doing. The left government, just like those two down there, and you guys will always play this game, and neither of you truly want to divide, because I think that's the agenda. But this is not you representing people. You're making fun of people. You're not even making fun of them. You're doing it in order to say, we don't care that you find that offensive, which you don't have to. You could do whatever you want. That's free speech. The reality of it that you all pretend we don't have now. My point, though, is that it's meant to anger them. It's meant to insult them. That's the intention, and you know it. That's why they laugh about it. The other children in the room going, yay, dunk on the Democrats, while allowing Epstein lists to get ignored, while allowing digital identities to be, while allowing all the things they actually claim they were fighting against. But yay, dunk on the Democrats. So I'm just highlighting that these people, and it's no different than Trump, the Biden before, and Obama and Bush, are not actually even trying to represent everybody. That speaks for itself. Now, the point is they're not different, though. And I think we need to recognize that. They love to frame it that way. But here's an important point that you might have seen. Meriwether Farms. And guys, this is everywhere if you're not trapped in the Twitter lie of what's going on. Dear Trump, it says, and this is a 36,000 followers, Make Beef America Great America Again. And it's a larger account in this conversation of the, food overlap, and they're big supporters of Trump. He says, we love you and support you, Donald Trump, but your suggestion to buy beef from Argentina, which he did, to stabilize beef prices would be an absolute betrayal to the American cattle rancher. Remember all the rightly so, the outrage about the supply chains and the farms and the UK and what they're all doing. And it's weird how Elon Musk and that whole movement just don't care all the times that Trump does things in the same direction, to the same degree, to the same outcome. You need to see that. Or Musk and the rest screaming about censorship in the UK. But then when they censor around Israel, nobody cares about that. But it says, we understand there are larger economic and geopolitical dynamics at play, including countering CCP influence. Why that has any effect? I think that's them just trying to nod to what he might say. Come on, guys. In what way does that even relate? Other than the partisan narrative that you'll probably parrot, the reality is to argue that CCP influence has any, like the point they're making in this would speak for itself, that they shouldn't be going outside of this country. Isn't that America first? But it says, but the practice of solving problems over there before solving problems here on our soil is what contributed to the downfall of the country. Exactly. So it's not America first. At the very least, it'd be America second. And it says, we understand beef prices are high and we admire your concern for all Americans. I don't believe that's even how he feels, but it says, but this is not the fault of American producer. This is the fault of the politicians who have allowed BRICS-aligned entities to dominate the meat industry. That's fair. And it says that participate in price fixing and also continually lie to their customers, just like people in this country do, just like most of these industries do. Washington for decades have facilitated the squeezing of our own ranchers while allowing these entities to flood their market with cheaper, lower quality. Yeah, that's what Trump's doing. You may not think that's his intention. That's what he's doing. And it says, and the American people don't even know these products are foreign because they allowed to be marketed as product of the United States. Yep. Now, they seem to think that they're going to reach Trump with this and seem to think that he might not be doing the same thing for the same reasons. That's wishful thinking, in my opinion. But it says, on top of all of this, there is only chaos coming from the Department of Agriculture. So Trump's administration. There is no true guidance, mixed messaging, and copious amounts of photo ops. Yep. So they are seeing it. It seems like they're trying to make this nice. And it says there is no one to trust over there. That's his people that truly understands the issues and isn't bought out or aligned with big industries. So this is make America healthy, a grand team? Yeah, it is, guys. The American cattle rancher is one of the last symbols of independence that we have in the nation. But the continued manipulation and betrayal by the very people who claim to support them need to end immediately. Well, see, what's crazy is I get the need to make the statement, but if you are recognizing that they're right now, as we speak, betraying you, why would going Trump stop betraying us? Why would that make him stop? I think the point is we need to recognize that stating this is just to get awareness, I would argue, and that the reality that they've come to is that they're not on your side anymore. I'd like to believe that. It says, while only representing 1% of the population, the work is tireless daily in poor conditions, with low margins, without thanks, all in order to keep this country fed. We would be a failed nation if we continue to betray the very people who put the food on the table for us. Right. You could make the same analogy in every other field of what's happening in this country, being sold out to who the highest bidder. There are so many voices on the outside that support you and want to see you succeed. Maybe it's time to start listening to them. See? That's very clear to me. It says your team knows how to get in touch with us. So what they're saying is, you're just not doing it. People are telling you that you told us you'd listen to, but you're not listening. Melanie Diarigio, what is it from? Executive Director, what is this? Campaign for New York Health, simply says Donald Trump isn't buying beef from Argentina to stabilize prices. He's buying beef because his mega wealthy friends and donors are heavily invested in Argentina. You know that. Now, people will push back as a partisan point, even if it's partisan driven. That's very accurate. And it says, and this is how we repays them, by selling out U.S. farmers. Now, you can disagree with the last part, but that's exactly what's happening. Not America first to me. Now, that's my point. They're no different. That's the same thing. All the cock of Biden and the sell. Yeah, guys, it just happens in different ways. And all the same elements before are still there. They didn't even change the reality of what look at what took place during COVID-19. Do you think they rolled that stuff back? Not even remotely. It's going hard the other direction. Now, this post, Thomas Massey. This is not America first. Here's Trump. I'm just going quickly. Here's Trump saying it. We'll buy Argentina's beef. Massey, of course, this is why he hates him, because he calls him out for the lies that he puts out. This is not America first. We don't need a U.S. flooded with beef from Argentina after our cattle ranchers have taken a beating over the last several years. because of government policy. It says bring back country of origin labels, 100%. Buy direct from the farmer. Yes, it's exactly why I moved to where I am now. Pass the Prime Act. I agree with that. America First and Maha. Not what Trump is doing. But they're going to get the support of the Benny Johnsons and the Alec Jones and the Nick Sorters and the Eric Doughertys. They're all going to go, whatever he just did, that's the thing. We're winning every single time. James Lee makes a really interesting point that I added to the end about not just the beef, but see, he's making the point about the military, but I want you to think about this point in everything we're dealing with. Simply that we're being sold out, that this government is being sold out to the highest bidder. And whether that's lobbying groups or Israel itself or, whatever it is, I think at this point they're selling whoever, if somebody comes with a money offer, Trump takes it. I think that's what we're dealing with. Maybe because he thinks that's best for the country. You can play that game if you want, except realize that it's just provably not. And that what we're doing is slowly losing everything we thought we had, and maybe we already did. Here is what he said about Trump selling out the military to private funding, essentially.
You know who this guy is. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, now the Secretary of War. But he's not really in charge. He's just the TV guy, looks good on camera, gets people riled up, but there's actually someone else who runs the military. And that guy is billionaire Steve Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He is the Pentagon's chief operating officer overseeing the day-to-day operations of the agency. He's also the co-founder of Cerberus Capital, which is a defense-focused private equity firm.
So, yeah, it's no big deal that we've got billionaire technocrat Zionists that are literally at positions of power. Not even to mention like a Miller who's supposed to be an advisor who seems to be more powerful than Marco Rubio. I mean, if you start to look at that, what that shows you is people who are not technically in the official vote, not even especially not the elected government, let alone the ones that Trump is, I guess what I'm saying is like a confirmation from like a Rubio is different than him appointing an advisor. So if you look at these advisors who are supposed to be the lesser side of it are the ones seemingly with the most power. And in a lot of ways, it immediately ties back to Israel. Dang it.
His private equity firm. Chief operating officer overseeing the day-to-day operations of the agency. He's also the co-founder of Cerberus Capital, which is a defense-focused private equity firm. And guess what he's doing now? Yep, private equity is getting ready to take over the funding of the U.S. Army.
Think about that.
This is reporting from Semaphore, quote, the U.S. Army has turned to private equity to fund an infrastructure overhaul. Two top White House officials met with Wall Street investors last week, part of a Trump administration effort to enlist the $13 trillion private capital industry into public financing. This is not good because, different than public funding, the only thing that these guys care about is returning money to shareholders. In fact, they have a fiduciary duty to maximize returns. In fact, many people don't know this, but private equity funds are contractually obligated to liquidate within a certain time horizon. And so that means at the end of their investment cycle, they must return money back to the shareholders no matter what. So in this case, their investment is weapons. So the only possible outcome in which their assets go up is, of course, more war.
Right. So aside from many other very obvious points I'm sure you didn't miss, that's a profit motive for war, which is not new, guys. It just means that somebody literally in a position to guide the direction for more war is one of the most profitable positions. Is somebody profiting more than almost anybody? Well, it's to say a lot, because it's hard to really know, especially like a Palantir overlap. But my God, guys, it's that we're being sold out. And if you can't recognize that that's literally like Israel Zionist technocrats who are in control of our military to some degree now, or any number of other overlaps, I mean, like I'm saying, that's where it seems to be aiming. Not that it's already happened, but that's what is going on. My God. Now we're going to get into some more Epstein stuff probably, in the next, will in the next show, but I just want to simply point out the reality that Mike Johnson is still dragging his feet and playing this really weird game where it says, unlike Mike Johnson, this is Kelly Morrison, unlike Mike Johnson, I actually spoke to Representative-elect, that's her name, Adelita, this week. She does not have an access to an official website to constituents because she's not in position yet. And so here he is going, well, how about she stops making TikTok videos and starts helping her constituency? Well, she's not in position yet. And I think he knows that, but he's trying to spin this out into a confusing position. The reality is she's not even accessible. She doesn't have access to her constituents or her phones or any of this stuff until she's allowed to be put in position. So he's trying to claim that she's the one not doing it, like in a weird backward way. These people, how do you not see this as desperation? Mike Johnson is still dragging this out about the Epstein files. Ken says the longer this goes on, the more Americans want to know why Republicans are protecting pedophiles. John Cleese says it's extraordinary to realize that we cannot trust a single word this man says. It's not extraordinary to me. I think I've known it my entire life. But Mike Johnson says, I'm following the Pelosi precedent. Pelosi took 25 days to swear in Julia Letlow. And Carl says, are you saying Pelosi refused to swear her in? My understanding is that it was the date that she requested to be sworn, because that's correct. But you see, Mike is deliberately trying to confuse who he sees as dumb enough people to follow. Now, either that means he knows you'll blindly repeat him because you're a liar, or he thinks you're too dumb to know that that's an obvious manipulation. You can decide what he thinks of you. Either way, you're either willing to lie or he sees you as too dumb to know you're being lied to. The reality is the Pelosi swear, he's trying to act like he's just following suit with the dumb Democrats. Well, okay, even if that was true, doesn't that mean you're just as bad as them? That's the point they all put forward. But the reality is it wasn't the same thing. He's desperate. I don't know how else to frame it. Here he is again, who refuses to swear. He goes, instead of doing TikTok videos, she could be serving her constituents. Again, same point. Well, she doesn't have them until she's sworn in. Where are the files? Of course, you get this kind of reporting from Mila Joy saying, the DOJ just released the transcripts from the audio of Maxwell. They're drowning in this, guys. And guess what? It shows you, the completely transparent, not edited at all audio of transcript that we didn't even see the full picture of. That was obviously edited. Or the idea that it's Maxwell, a convicted pedophile, sex trafficker, who already had secret meetings and moved to a nice prison before they had this whole conversation, was given all sorts of information, was left very happy. And now we're going to just blindly accept what she says? Well, guess what? The interview proves that Trump had nothing to do with Epstein after word started spreading of his pedo ways. Right. So all it really is, again, is her going, he didn't have anything to do with it, which we already know she said. It was already put out. We already know she's lying about it for 1,000 reasons. And this Mia Joy comes out on the 20th and goes, she said he's innocent, we know. So you're trusting a pedophile? It's just propaganda. And this is what Jake Chansley actually says. And this is his account, American Shaman, 145,000 followers. He goes, now you trust Maxwell? She's the same woman that facilitated the brutal rape and beating of a 15-year-old girl to a former Israeli prime minister and did so multiple times, among many other things, correct? So what I think is hilarious about this, oh, wait, hold on. Did I miss that? Where was the... Oh, is this the wrong one? Maybe it's the wrong one. I think there's another post we're going to get to, if I get to it today, where, of all people, Jake, who's, seen as like this January 6th hero to some, seen as like a operative to others. It's really weirdly mixed. I'm very skeptical for many ways as well, that he gets called out by the Republicans for pointing out what is obviously, I think, an objective reality, and just kind of speaks to the larger manipulation. But as Evan Loves Worf says, Epstein cover-up, Ghislaine Maxwell leniency, which I believe is building towards a complete pardon, floating Diddy and Maxwell pardons, moving all law enforcement resources into immigration, which very much undermined the absolute focus on pedophile sex trafficking. That's a provable fact. I made this point right in the beginning. It's so uncomfortable to team sport Republicans that doesn't get any conversation. But he pulled people away from what they argued was the most important, and in many ways is. The idea of protecting children should be one of the most important focuses of law enforcement. And they moved away from that and went after a bunch of people that, ran traffic tickets and so on. And it says he's literally the best thing to happen to pedophiles in history, says Evan. The point is, Donald Trump is considering commuting Diddy's sentence. Why? Isn't it weird of all the people like Epstein, Diddy, Andrew Tate, they seem to be protecting the worst sexual predators we've seen. Now, this section we'll get into is about more of, as Gen X Girl writes, does MAGA realize how captured they are, understanding that you're now being told to support a Democrat because he points out what other Republicans they don't like are saying? It's proving what we've always said. That it was never about the partisan game. It's about trying to manipulate you and to control you. Here's Alex Jones. This is Jay Shields saying a Jewish guy, and Alex Jones to try to convince you that the globalists, not Israel. How long have I been telling you that? First of all, that is Israel, guys. They're a central player in the globalist agenda. And he knows that, which I think is why he's pulling his punch. But it's just funny to me. Full interview, Jewish journalist and activist Andrew Mayer warns that globalists are using the Greens. Now, it's not about whether he's Jewish. I think it definitely believes it plays a factor because he's a Zionist. The point is that it's about him trying to convince you that it's anything other than Israel when it matters the most. Or Glenn Beck coming in and going, Speaker Johnson just confirmed something. Oh, great. The government speaker just confirmed something. So you're trusting the government now, Ben? Yeah. Or Glenn? He always has. Just understand it the side. But he says, Mike Johnson just confirmed something I've been warning about. That Israel's taking over the country? No. That anarchists, Islamists, communists, and socialists are all working together to overthrow the West. Yeah, it's a vanilla ISIS spin. These are the people that are supposed to be the journalists of our time? Wow. And I was called crazy for predicting it. He goes, and which we know is the Democrat Party. Right. So the Democrat Party is now overtaking the West? Let me back that up. The West? These people have lost the plot, and they are trying to convince you that it's anything other than everything in front of you right now. Zion Observer says it looks like AIPAC set up a website to funnel secretive donations to candidates. It's true. We'll go over it. They're just trying to sidestep the reality because they know everyone sees them, guys. They've lost control. But again, Vance went to Israel because that's normal, right? No big deal there. Now, this is the guy I was talking about before, the guy who's rejecting AIPAC money. What I found interesting, and this is what Nick points out, it turns out, though, he is very clearly still supporting Israel and their ongoing genocide. Okay, so what that shows me, and I still make the same point, he's using the momentum. He sees, and maybe even along with Israel's support secretly, who knows, but he sees that most Americans are like, AIPAC is a problem, because it is. It's objectively obvious. And so he goes, I won't take any more. And my point is we should still go, good. Yes, even though I think it's obviously opportunism because he still supports the people doing that, but still point to it. You see, I think it's important to stress that. Still point out that's good. We should all do it. Make opportunists like this start thinking the truth is more to their benefit because it should be. But we have the point about going after Massey and how Israel's funding all of everyone going against. I mean, look, left or right, anybody calling out Israel is being attacked by the Israel lobby. We have Trump leaning in with Lindsey Graham instead of Massey, and that's America first. Insane. Massey calling out the vaccine schedule and the vaccine and Pfizer profiting from your forced vaccination. And it says Massey exposed that doctors were taking bribes to inject you with experimental mRNA, and Trump is signing deals with Pfizer. Sure, you can figure out what that shows you, okay? Stop falling for it, guys. Stop falling for what's happening. And the FEC is showing that 100% of the money being used to attack Massey from people like Trump is coming from out of state. So this is an organized effort to go after him. We'll go back to that in a second, but to just generally go over some of these lies, then we're going to wrap up here. And I'm going to go into this in depth, but I just want to point these to you, and I'm probably going to do this early tomorrow. This is a clip from 60 Minutes showing that federal judges have caught the U.S. government providing false information in over 35 court cases. Yes, question whether that's being lied to, but it's a Democrat trick. Always question that. We shouldn't even need to say that. The immediate response should be, I already questioned it. I'm waiting for source material. The point, though, is I can prove to you in many of these cases that they've lied because I could tell you, I could show you the lie with comparing it to the truth, and I can also show you that they've been caught and then had to adjust their story. So they've been caught repeatedly lying about Garcia. Here's the guy literally said he had to resign because they were being forced to lie about him. But you get all the Nick's orders out there going, we knew it. He's a terrorist, rapist, monster because Bondi says so. Or the 178 people who have already been arrested, held without charge, without warrants, who are American citizens. And people like Stephen Miller lying about that. Karen Bass saying over 770 American citizens have been detained. Okay. Literally, you can prove that, not just because ProPublica points to it. Stephen Miller says, abject lies. Violent leftists have been arrested and charged. Well, guess what? Even Grok proves that he's lying. And I really want this to set in. It's not because Grok says you can independently verify it, which I have with the links they provide, as well as other information, which I include. The point is Stephen Miller's lying. It fits a pattern of administration rhetoric, downplaying enforcement excesses and seen as in a prior quote of denial as contradicted by Miller's own statements. This cut to the chase. Yes, Miller's denial appears to be a falsehood. It misrepresents the documented evidence. We'll go through this tomorrow. The point is Stephen Miller's knowingly lying to you every single day. Dan Bongino comes out and says, thank you, Mr. President. We'll not let up. And Trump says, the FBI under my administration is doing an incredible job, and list off a whole bunch of numbers. Since the 20th, more than 28,000 violent criminals have been arrested. Record-breaking, which comes from things that Cash and everybody said out loud. This person rightly says nothing but lies, and I care to look. And I agree, but I look. And not just because Grok says. I'm just doing this to point out that even Grok from Elon Musk, who's obviously updating it every day to get the lies he likes, are still pointing out what's going on. So, what evidence has been presented to back up the claim, starting with just 28,000 followers? Okay, cut to the chase. Kash Patel's statements and things he showed you on paper. That's it, right? Bongino posts about it on Twitter. President Trump posts about it on Truth Social. FBI, DOJ announcements about the numbers. That's literally what we're talking about, guys. Now, look, I could just as objectively point to say that that doesn't prove it's false either, right? What I'm pointing to you is that nobody has ever verified these things like they keep lying about, or don't they lied about, or 7-0 wins in Supreme Court Miller lies about. They lie like they're breathing, guys, and it's not unique to this administration. It is pretty excessive, but it's not unique that they lie just on the Republican side. Primarily supported by administration-led announcements. And just simply goes off all the graphics they shared. It's the same idea, guys. Oh, of course, on top of that, the discussions were then shared by Mario Nawfal, Eric Dougherty, right? It's just going, stunning, the thing they pointed to. Those are journalists? Oh, look, no source material, no verification. No, it doesn't matter. Lie after lie after lie. That's the whole conversation. Gunther Eagleman says, FBI rescued this many because these two said so. And these are supposed to be the journalists, the new media, who just go parrot government. And that's supposed to be fighting the deep state? Cristian Ohm. She's arrested over 480,000 criminal illegal aliens. Excuse me. 70% had prior charges. Okay. Big numbers. Let's see what Grok says. Noam's presentation relied primarily on internal DHS and ICE operational data. She did not release a detailed public report, raw data sets, or third-party audit during the event. Okay, maybe it still is. Maybe she just doesn't have that yet. While Noam presented the figures confidently, no independent evidence or detailed reports from the DHS or otherwise are released at the event. A Cato Institute study showed data and found non-criminal entities that had taken into ICE custody. By the way, we know that's not true, the numbers they put out, or the amount of 70%, but it says ICE detention stats show 71.5% of detainees have no criminal convictions, the exact opposite of what she said. So she took the number and reversed the outcome. These people are knowingly deceiving you. Federal judges have challenged related enforcement. We'll come back to all of this. But what's funny is it may very well be that she doesn't know that she's the one, they're the PR face, like he said about Hegseth, that aren't even really in charge. That actually makes sense to me for the interest of very obvious people. Well, Elon Musk says yesterday, postponing Grokpedia. We need to do more work to purge out the propaganda. Yeah, right. So that's all I'm showing you to recognize that Grok showing you they're lying is probably going to change soon enough. Like the reality is they're updating and update. What's the propaganda? Information you disagree with? Somebody who says things that are wrong all the time? I mean, if you're inputting data that is using to evaluate, the fact that you have to constantly update and audit it and make sure, that's you controlling the outcome. I don't know how else we see that. Here's an example of an account sharing information that was flooded through the U.S. accounts and through the U.S. rather Republican supporting team. So Daniel McAdams shared this, lying bastards. Oh, but they deleted the post, and it is deleted. And I said, for when it gets deleted, for when it gets obfuscated, and here's the post. Or first, this one just says, Colombian president claims one of the narco boats destroyed by the U.S. Naval Task Force was just a poor Colombian fisherman. Does that look like a poor fisherman? Okay. U.S. Homeland Security News. So it's like a independent fake media account report. Well, it got edited or fact checked by Twitter, and it says, no, it's an old photo from 2024. And so at the time, I simply said, oh, where was it? Right here. I said, you got to love the U.S. getting caught lying, knowingly lying to you, and then getting called out by the very AI they're building to control your life. Now, the data was something that was but lies coming from the U.S. government are obvious about them being terrorist boats and not fishing boats. And it says, guess this is what you get when you allow morons and sycophants to be in positions of power. Stupidity. And then guess what? The guy literally posted it again. And this is what I keep trying to show you guys. So you got called out and you just posted again? Apparently so. You absolute clown are more likely part of the manipulation. And every time, millions of followers, like this one right already. This one alone has, I guess that's not as much. Maybe people are catching on to the lie. The first one got millions. So it's cropped a screenshot. He did the same post with a different image. So what I'm trying to show you is this U.S. Homeland Security News that has 489,000 followers is deliberately deceiving people. After it gets caught, after it gets shown to lie, it deletes it and just gets a different picture, posts it again. That's what we're dealing with, guys. And this is Trump telling you we're going to go to war with Colombia now. And how long have we been saying this? Or rather, we're going to call them out. The point is Colombia is clearly the largest, most cocaine in the world comes out of Colombia, trafficked through either that or another U.S. ally. I've said this forever about the focus on Venezuela. What I find hilarious is that the president of Colombia starts calling out Trump's lies, and then they go, guess what? Now you're a problem too. Okay, did that all pick up over the last 3 days? Did Colombia only just start becoming a producer? Okay, so all it shows you is they don't care about the problem until it is in their interest to call it out. And this is in Trump's interest because he's petty. Because he's angry that he gets called out. And so he goes, oh, yeah, Colombia? Well, guess what? Now you're a narco-terrorist. That's what's happening. And then they go on Fox News and they talk about how we need to make it the 51st state. That's just wild, guys. He says, America supports the people of Colombia. They just need to have a moronic leader right now. There's an election next year. Oh, here we go. Sounds like they're getting ready to do a bit of election interference. It's the same old thing. Now watch as they do that. There's many, many people lying about why it's happening in Venezuela. Because fentanyl is killing tens of thousands of Americans every year from Venezuela terrorists. And Glenn says, genuinely scary how many people have become convinced overnight to claim fentanyl comes into the U.S. due to Venezuela, even though Venezuela has basically nothing to do with the entrance of fentanyl into the U.S. And the U.S. government reports make that clear. It's because Trump says so. It's because Bondi and Petty, because they say so. That's the point I'm trying to make with this segment. It's very obvious. And they don't, and even the fact check. Nope, that's not how that works. I mean, it is wild how much this proliferates through the conversation. And President Trump declares war on the Mexican drug cartels, even though they're quite literally working with the drug cartels and have been. Here's the DEA in August who got caught for literally laundering $19 million of their cash, covering it up. I don't remember anybody from the DEA going to jail. Do you? It's not going to happen. Indictments likely not to come. Comey, all of them, Bolton. It seems set to fail by design, in my opinion. But here they are going, oh, look, Obama is a criminal still. This is posted on the 17th of October. Over and over and over. You know what? I agree with you, but guess what's not going to happen? The claims of them stepping out, which they keep doing. Cheers, Mike Flynn on the 19th. Russiagate was not a political scandal. Yeah, man, everyone understands they lied. And other than people are, anyway, the point is that no one is going after him. You can't keep calling him a treasonous traitor and then doing nothing. He'd be in jail if they had evidence like this. But guess what? Look over there. Obama's birth certificate. We knew it. Okay, good. Arrest him then. You know he did it. Present the evidence, charge him with the crime, and put him in jail. Because it is a crime to misrepresent that, especially at a high level like the presidency. Guess what's not going to happen, though? You see where this goes. But breaking! We exposed him! Okay. Why isn't he in jail then? I mean, it just becomes obnoxious. Here we go. Special counsel Ed Martin has dropped a bombshell, says MAGA Army. Guess what? It's full-scale investigation of the actions of January 6th committee, and round we go. You understand, not a new committee, but investigations of the committee and how they did it. It's just mindless, and it never stops. The evidence is there. If you have evidence, charge them with a crime. This is meant to make you think the wheels are spinning. George Soros. Oh, it's all coming down. George Soros and emails. And we know the reality of how these groups, how the Koch brothers, or brother today, Soros Foundation, Elon Musk, the DeVos, all these different groups that very much do this. In many ways, by the way, which aren't illegal, just manipulative. What's crazy to me is that we'll get into, I'm going to leave it there for the point. Trump calls for George Soros and son to face federal charges. But guess what won't happen? Mark my words. These people will, in my opinion, to be clear. But I do not believe these people will be held accountable even remotely. It's about creating the momentum to go after you for deciding to fund a protest, or let alone be at a protest, or anything like that they decide to claim is part of this network that we've never even defined or proven, which I argue is in some way there, just for both sides, the government and how they use it against you. And a lot we'll get into in the No Kings rally point. And just to briefly show you now, the reality that there was basically zero violence, and all the events that we did see, according to Grok, and all the different reports coming from left, right media, and not the screaming influencers that lie, like Nick Sorter will prove tomorrow how he just blatantly misrepresented a picture of fog and acted, oh my God, it's terror. And that's the only one they show, along with an effigy of Trump getting stabbed by a kid. Yeah, it's not a crime. It's also something that happens every single protest left and right that I've ever seen, it seems. But the examples that Grok puts forward were all done by the other side. A hit and run driver intentionally struck a seated protester, right? A counter protester shouted slurs and hit somebody. A counter protester was sprayed with mace. A woman attempted, this one might be. Okay, so this one, a counter protester, meaning I believe. Yeah, let's just even say, I want to make sure tomorrow, but that's the breadth of it. A woman attempted to steal a U.S. flag, which, by the way, is a person who was protesting, who was holding an American flag, and they didn't like that, so they took it from her because freedom, right? Democracy and liberty. It's just, my point is, guys, that they are misrepresenting all of it, and there was basically zero violence. So my point is always, is if there was no violence and they're the ones telling you these maniac lefty terrorists and all of that, shouldn't you then go, well, what am I missing? Right? Well, I was thinking in the beginning, I think what we're getting to is the idea that we're creating, in some way, the idea that they are secretly violent and underneath the surface, which everyone on the right seems to think in some ways is reality of some people on that side. But then they go, but see, we can't get them. They're working underneath their constitutional rights are protecting them. So we need to find a way just temporarily to get that out of the way so we can go after what we know is there. And it's exactly what was being done about the right. Right? How many times have we brought that up? How many times have we played that clip? Let's see if I have it real quick. I think it's under her name. There it is.
The world is changing, and every counterterrorism professional I speak to in the federal government and overseas feels like we are at the doorstep of another 9/11, maybe not something that catastrophic in terms of the visual or the numbers, but that we can see it building and we don't quite know how to stop it.
I'll try to find that other post. But so, we've talked about this. Whitney and I talked about it. The reality is they're pointing to Republicans who they claim were not breaking the law, who are acting within their rights, but we see it coming and we can't because the rights are stopping us. And so they made a call, and just like they're doing today, which is already happening, to ignore what is inherent, to ignore what is, which shall not be infringed. It's insulting. So overall, we're going to get into some more lies about that and the lies around it. And ultimately what, from the Republican side of this, the claiming all these terrorists and monsters and all the violence is coming, and then ultimately only making fun of them and pointing to like this derisive kind of like, look, to cut the chase, I think we're at a point where they're trying to elicit some kind of a response. I think we have to be honest with ourselves about what is really going on. I'm just as I can see it just as like anybody else can, that there are elements of people in the, what I argue are the team sport side, the left and the right, who are absolutely as problematic, as extreme as they like to say about each other. We know that's there. We can see the Patriot Fronts and the Antifas and these parts that are very much tapped into this, or the kind of weird Q underlap, or the weird sort of woke anti-trans underlap. Both sides of these are being cultivated. I think none of which represents the majority of Americans on any side. And yet this is what's being presented to us. And they're using this to cause you to react in a way that justifies your own subjugation. I just don't know how many more ways we can say this, and I'll do it every day I possibly can, because I care about you. I believe in you. I believe in what we're capable of when we actually just decide to be objective. Decide to look beyond the partisan division that everyone knows is there and just be objective, right? Just be honest about what you're looking at. The problem is that there's so many very influential people out there that wildly profit. And, you know what I think of it as? And wildly profit and continue to do so. I think of it like the Jersey Shore example. When that show, I remember pointing that show going like, this is just like the lowest common denominator. It's just like the worst type of people. And I mean, not the worst, but, the kind of people that aren't, lacking moral and, integrity and, moral compass. And my thought was like, this is being praised. It's the same point they make about the Tate brothers and the way the Trump and Candace and Tucker praise these people when they are objectively vile people because they say what they look for them. You can look for yourselves. Look at Milk Bar TV breaking down all the things they publicly said. The point is that these people are horrifying. And so I think, I'm going to lose it now. Hold on. Of course, right at the end. I mean, I think overall, damn it, that's frustrating. But I think the point, what I was getting at before, where was it? The last, that they're supporting like the Diddy point, the Epstein point, that they're absolutely protecting these things. I was going to go somewhere with that, but at the end of the day, I guess the main point we can finish with is that, using that situation, protecting that and pretending it's not what it appears to be, that's what it was, is that ultimately you're creating a situation, there's the Jersey Shore point, that it convinces people because these larger influencers are acting like it's okay, that that's what you should be like. That generations of children grew up thinking that this is what people want, that I'm supposed to be womanizer and petty and profiteering and materialistic. And that's what really very much trickled down to a lot of people. And the same thing is happening with what they're doing out there, with what the government's doing on left and right. It is driving in the worst of us, when I don't think the majority of us even want that or believe that anymore, but it is still there. So it's important to stand up, to be vocal, call it out. If you believe in what we're doing, if you find value in the work we're putting forward, let us know. And we do this for free. Put out the content because we believe it's most important that you just have access to it, research it, and even if it's just a word of encouragement, reach out and let us know what it means to you. And the financial support, we need to continue. So let us know. Now, I'll leave it there. I will be seeing you tomorrow. Like, again, save for some random thing. That is my plan. And we'll get into it. And probably some more additional stuff, but that's a lot to get into right there. So I'll look forward to that tomorrow. And as always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.